You begin in the soft blue hush of an early winter morning on the northern plains, where the cold doesn't just nibble at your fingertips. It politely reminds you that it owns the entire landscape. Frost glitters across the grass like someone spilled the world's fanciest craft glitter. And the air feels so crisp, you could probably snap a piece of it off and keep it in your pocket. You pull your shoulders up, trying to trap whatever warmth your body still remembers. Ahead of you, a tipi rises from the ground like a pale, graceful cone of life against the endless open sky. You take a slow breath. The cold stings your nose in a way that says, "Good morning. You probably won't make it through this day." The tone is friendly, in that slightly threatening winter kind of way. A thin line of smoke curls through the opening at the top of the tipi, drifting upward as if it's already had its morning coffee. You walk closer, snow crunching beneath your feet softly at first, then that satisfying brittle crackle that sounds like nature chewing. This camp is home to a Lakota family, and they've been awake longer than you. The winter sun sleeps in like a teenager, but the people here don't have that luxury. Before you step inside, a gentle nudge if you're enjoying this quiet journey. You're welcome to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and maybe comment your location and local time. It always feels nice to know where you're listening in from, even if you're bundled under blankets right now. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey. You lift the flap and enter the tipi. At once, you feel the remarkable change. A soft wave of warm air presses against your face, like opening the oven, but in a non-threatening, nobody is burning bread sort of way. The warmth is surprising, almost clever, and entirely out of proportion to the fragile-looking canvas walls around you. That's your first hint that these winter shelters are far more sophisticated than they appear. You take in the interior. The tipi is arranged like a quiet, intentional universe. The fire pit rests at the center, glowing embers, a few slow flames rising and falling as though breathing. Around it, family belongings sit in orderly places. Tools, blankets, decorated parfleche containers. Above, poles angle together in a harmony of geometry and intuition. A critical historical fact glows in that firelight. Many plains tribes, including the Lakota, use tipis constructed with a double-layer system in winter, an inner lining that creates a convection flow, channeling warm air upward while drawing cold air down to the perimeter. It's a natural heating system without any wires, and you can feel the effect the way you feel warm steam drifting toward your hands. You move closer to the inner lining, noticing how it curves around the base of the poles like a warm, protective skin. You gently touch its soft, pliable hide. Behind it, the cold air slips downward through the narrow gap between the outer cover and the inner lining, whisked out of the living space through the bottom. The rising warm air pulls cool air away, keeping the interior surprisingly temperate. The design works so efficiently you wonder if this counts as early home HVAC engineering. A woman sits beside the fire, stirring a small pot with the calm assurance of someone who knows exactly how to manage both boiling water and wandering guests. She glances up at you with a soft grin, the kind that says you look hopelessly cold and she is reserving judgment. You sit across from her, letting the warmth sink into your bones. The smoke rises in a thin, elegant column and escapes through the smoke hole at the top two flaps, adjusted by poles from the ground. It's an age-old system, perfected through generations. Historians still debate whether the precise adjustments of the smoke flaps varied more by tribe, family tradition, or just the whims of the wind. But the result is clear. The air here feels clean, warm, and surprisingly pleasant compared to the icy world outside. A small child toddles past you, dragging a fur-lined blanket that looks like it weighs as much as they do. They plop beside the woman, curl into the blanket, and immediately fall into that heavy sleep only children and exhausted adults can achieve. You envy them. To be fair, you envy anyone warm right now. You're just beginning to appreciate the quiet softness of this interior when you notice a curious detail. A pouch hanging near the door, decorated with beads in the pattern of a thunderbird. Inside, based on its shape, seems to be a little bundle of dried plants. An obscure tidbit. Some families hung herbs like sweetgrass or sage near the entrance during winter, not for mystical reasons only, but to gently scent the air and discourage insects trying their luck on warmer days. It's a subtle, unexpected touch of comfort, and it makes the space feel even more deliberate. The woman stirs the pot, again, and the steam swirls upward, blending with the smoke in a lazy ballet of rising heat. She gestures gently toward you, as if inviting you to warm your hands. You do, feeling life return to your knuckles. You begin to realize that the tipi isn't just warm, it's alive in its own way, breathing with every shift of the wind and every change of the fire. A few logs pop in the flames, sending sparks up like tiny stars deciding to take a field trip. You lean back slightly, letting your eyes follow the movement. Your breath slows. Outside, winter still rules. But in here, you sit in a carefully crafted bubble of heat, airflow, and intention. Everything feels connected. The lining, the smoke flaps, the orientation of the entrance, the choice of hides, the shape of the space, the way the fire burns cleanly. You feel sheltered, grounded, and just a little sleepy. The woman's pot begins to simmer, filling the air with a warm, earthy smell. You begin to understand just how clever these winter adaptations were. Not flashy clever, not look at me, I'm an invention clever. More like the kind of clever that grows from living with the land for generations, learning its rhythms, and crafting solutions that feel effortless. You settle into the warm quiet, and the fire crackles again, soft, steady, endlessly patient. Your journey has begun. The warmth settles deeper into your clothes as you sit inside the tipi, letting your fingers thaw one stubborn joint at a time. The fire gives off that gentle, rhythmic crackle that feels like it's trying to coax you into a nap you absolutely would take if you weren't pretending to be alert and historically observant. You breathe in the smoky sweetness of the air, cleaner than you expected, softer than you imagined, like winter has been put on mute. Around you, the tipi lives and shifts. The hide walls ripple slightly as a gust of wind brushes the outside, but inside, the temperature stays surprisingly stable. You hear the low murmur of voices outside, someone leading horses past, the faint thump of hooves, a quiet laugh drifting through the cold. You realize how strange it feels to sit somewhere so warm while the world just beyond is made of ice and breath clouds. You glance again at the inner lining, the winter secret superstar of this entire operation. You follow it with your eyes as it curves neatly around the fire pit, rising halfway up the poles. It isn't decorative. It isn't optional. It's functional insulation, directing airflow in a way that feels almost modern. A major historical detail. This lining didn't just keep cold air out, it actively allowed warm air to circulate upward and outward, reducing smoke buildup and keeping the interior dry. Without it, the fire inside would drown you in smoke long before it warmed your toes. Across the fire, the woman stirs her pot again, the spoon scraping gently against the bottom. She adds a pinch of something dried and fragrant, and for a moment, the air brightens with a sweet herbal note. You try to guess what she added. You try not to look like you're trying to guess. She definitely notices you trying. She definitely chooses not to comment. From behind her, a man enters the tipi, brushing snow from his shoulders. He moves with practiced ease, ducking under the doorway without disrupting the fabric. His cheeks are red from wind, his breath still steaming. He nods at you, in that way people do, when they acknowledge you exist, but haven't yet decided if you're useful or just another creature who wandered in to warm up. You nod back, matching his energy. Cordial, slightly awkward, very cold. He crouches by the fire and begins adjusting the wood carefully, choosing pieces, turning them so the flames catch in a steady, balanced pattern. It's almost ceremonial, though it's really just good fire management. He adds a thicker log last, placing it so it will burn slowly through the morning. A practical choice. But as he works, you notice something unusual. A small, flat stone rests at the edge of the fire pit, warming quietly like it's sunbathing. The woman reaches over, picks it up with a piece of cloth, and slips it beneath a fur covering near where the child sleeps. An obscure cultural detail. Some families heated stones this way to create small, radiant pockets of warmth around sleeping areas, an early equivalent of a hot water bottle, except it couldn't leak or betray you at 3 a.m. By going cold and wet, the man finishes tending the fire and adjusts the smoke flaps with a long pole. You hear the soft rustle of hide as the flaps open just enough to release smoke without letting the frigid wind pour in. He checks the angle, subtle, intentional. Historians still debate whether these flap adjustments were standardized by teaching or learned simply through living, but most agree that mastering them was essential for winter survival. Today, you watch that mastery in motion. He does not miss. Outside, the horses snort and shift, their steps crunching heavily in the snow. The wind hums across the plains, that long, wide-open hum that makes you feel like you're living under the world's biggest sky, which you are. The tipi's canvas sways gently, and you realize how alive these structures are. They breathe with the wind. They flex without breaking. They whisper without collapsing into loud tantrums, like certain modern tents you may or may not have tried to assemble in your past. The woman ladles something from the pot into a small bowl and places it in front of you. Your first thought is gratitude. Your second thought is confusion. Your third thought is acceptance, because warm food is warm food, and you're too polite to ask questions. You take a sip. It tastes earthy, comforting, slightly sweet, and unexpectedly complex, like someone blended winter, memory, and practicality into one small serving. You nod approvingly. The woman hides a smile. As you eat, you notice the way the family organizes their interior space. The sleeping area sits opposite the entrance, where the warmth pools most naturally. The cooking area rests to one side. Tools and belongings line the edges, stored with intention and care. Nothing sits idle. Nothing sits out of place. Everything has a role in surviving the cold. You look up toward the top of the tipi again, the crown of poles interlocked in steady equilibrium. Light sneaks through in thin lines, bright and crisp. Smoke drifts past them in thin ribbons, disappearing into the open sky. The structure feels both intimate and expansive, protective yet porous, like a small piece of architecture collaborating with nature instead of trying to fight it. The man leans back from the fire and gives a small gesture toward the doorway, an invitation for you to step outside. Not to leave, but to look. You follow him out into the cold, bracing slightly as the warm air leaves your skin. The world outside feels harsher now that you know the softness inside. He points toward another tipi nearby, larger, covered in extra layers of hide, with snow piled around the base deliberately. Another historical detail. Some families use snow itself as insulation, packing it around the bottom of the tipi to block drafts and trap warm air. Snow, surprisingly, is a decent insulator when handled intentionally. You consider this fact. You reconsider every time you've cursed at snow. Then, you notice something else. A small shield is hanging near the entrance of one nearby tipi, not as protection, but as a wind indicator. When the wind shifts, the shield moves, and someone inside adjusts the smoke flaps accordingly. A low-tech weather station, perfectly functional. The man looks at you, gives a small nod that translates roughly to, "You see, it's not magic, it's knowledge." You nod back with the universal expression for, "I'm impressed," and also freezing. You both step back into the warm interior, and your body sighs in relief. The fire crackles, the child stirs, the herbs near the entrance give off a faint sweetness. You sit again, feeling the warmth wrap around you like a deliberate embrace. The day outside is growing brighter. The winter is not getting any gentler. But inside this tipi, you feel protected, grounded, and if you're honest, just a little spoiled by the intelligent warmth. You settle back onto the soft furs inside the tipi, easing into the warmth with the kind of relief normally reserved for stepping into a hot bath after pretending all day that you're a tough, capable adult. The fire glows steadily now, low but confident, as if it knows exactly how much heat it needs to give without showing off. You hear the wind outside picking up, brushing against the hides in sweeping strokes that feel almost intentional, like the planes are testing the structure. And the structure is politely declining to be bothered. The child still sleeps soundly near, the warmed stone bundled in furs thick enough to repel winter's best attempts at discouragement. Every so often, he lets out a small sigh, the kind only deeply warm and deeply comfortable people make. You envy him again. It's becoming a recurring theme of your visit. The woman tends to a bundle of dried meat hanging on a rack near the fire. Its surface glistens slightly from the heat, and she checks it with a practiced eye. A historical detail worth tucking into your already growing respect for winter ingenuity. Many plains tribes use the warmth and dryness of the winter tipi interior to soften, warm, or finish drying stored foods. It wasn't simply a shelter. It was a microclimate one that could support cooking, drying, mending, teaching, storytelling, and basically every winter survival task that didn't involve frostbite. You watch her work with quiet admiration. Her motions are smooth, unhurried, the rhythm of someone who has repeated these tasks so many times that doing them is almost a kind of meditation. You wonder how many winters she's lived through, how many storms she's endured inside this living structure of wood and hide. You wonder what she thinks of you, a shivering outsider trying to blend in like a popsicle, pretending to be a person. The man re-enters from outside with an armful of wood. Snow clings to his clothing in sparkling clusters that dissolve as he approaches the fire. He places the wood carefully near the pit, not too close to accidentally ignite, but close enough to warm and dry before its next job. You note the method stacked upright to maximize airflow, angled slightly inward so any snow melts downward without soaking anything important. There's no wasted motion, no casual decisions. Everything done here is deliberate. He gestures for you to come closer. You scoot toward him, trying not to trip over the blankets and absolutely failing to look graceful. He picks up a long, narrow stick and points to the top of the tipi, tracing an imaginary path downward through the air. You follow it with your eyes, confused at first, then curious. He's showing you the convection flow. Warm air rises from the fire, spirals upward along the slanted walls, slips between the poles, and exits through the smoke hole. Meanwhile, cold air is drawn down behind the inner lining, moving quietly around the perimeter floor before sliding toward the fire pit's base, where it heats and rises again. It's a cycle, steady, controlled, efficient. You watch the smoke rise and disappear, perfectly paired with the warm air currents. Historians still debate whether certain tribes use seasonal lining lengths to fine-tune this airflow, or whether adjustments were done mainly by instinct. But either way, the result is the same, a structure that breathes like a living thing. Outside, the wind shifts, and the smoke flaps rustle again. This time you hear a faint voice, someone from another tipi calling out a single word. The man lifts his head, listens, then adjusts the flaps slightly, an obscure cultural tidbit. In large winter camps, families sometimes coordinated smoke flap adjustments by sound or by watching each other, especially during storms. If the wind changed direction, one family's adjustment might signal the rest like a quiet, practical neighborhood watch for airflow. You store this fact in your mind under the category of things far more elegant than modern apartment living. The man sits beside you again, warming his hands briefly above the flames. You mimic him, grateful for an excuse to bring your fingers closer to the heat without appearing needy. He gives you a small, approving nod. You accept the imaginary certificate of Basic Fire Appreciation Level 1. The woman finishes checking the dried meat and moves on to a set of tools lying neatly arranged on the floor. You watch as she picks up a bone awl, smooth, sharpened, polished by years of handling, and begins working it through a piece of hide. The soft, rhythmic scrape fills the tipi with a sound both soothing and precise. It's the winter sound of productivity, of things being maintained so life can continue without interruption. You consider how many modern tools have never earned the privilege of sounding this peaceful. After a moment, she pauses and gestures toward the hide walls, tapping lightly with the awl. She's drawing your attention to another winter feature, the adjustable bottom edge of the tipi covering. In cold months, families often lowered the cover all the way to the ground, or even beyond it, to trap heat more effectively. The hides were secured with wooden pegs or stones, creating a tight seal against drafts. You lean closer, running your hand along the edge of the wall. It feels thick and dense, layered with purpose. Behind it, snow is packed carefully, forming a windbreak you didn't notice before. Another historical detail. Snowdrift itself was sometimes shaped intentionally around the tipi to improve insulation. Winter wasn't an enemy here, it was a building material. The man reaches behind him and lifts a small bundle wrapped in hide. He unties it slowly, revealing several thin pieces of charcoal, ground herbs, and something powdered that smells faintly sweet. He sprinkles a pinch into the fire. The flames brighten, shifting color just slightly, and the scent deepens warm, woody, comforting. You breathe it in, surprised at the complexity. You ask with your eyes the universal gesture for, "What is that?" He gives a faint smile and answers with a single word you can't quite interpret. The woman clarifies with a softer explanation, a mixture used occasionally in winter to freshen the air or to add pleasant aroma during long storm days. Different families used different mixes. Recipes varied, and some were kept private. You file this new cultural tidbit under ancient aromatherapy done right. As the scent curls into the warm air, you feel yourself settling deeper into the moment. The teepee feels smaller, cozier, somehow even warmer. The fire shifts into a new rhythm. Its crackles low and contented. You realize how safe this all feels. Not safe in a locked door, modern technology kind of way, but safe in a the people who live here have mastered this world kind of way. You scan the space again, letting your eyes linger on the floating ribbons of smoke, the sleeping child, the flicker of firelight across the lining, the steady hands of the woman, the calm posture of the man. Everything here works together. Everything has intention. Everything belongs. You exhale softly, feeling your breath join the warm air around you. For a moment, you forget the cold entirely. Outside, winter waits, but inside this teepee, you are warm, welcome, and learning far more than you expected. The fire murmurs in front of you, like it's telling an old story, one it has told every winter since long before you arrived, and will continue telling, long after you've gone. You rest your palms near the warmth, fingers slowly gaining confidence in their ability to bend again. The cold had stiffened your hands into decorative winter ornaments, but the tipi brings them back to life, one joint at a time. Outside, the wind sweeps across the plains in long, dramatic flourishes, the kind that make you feel very small, but also oddly poetic. You hear it rush past the tipi walls in a deep, hollow whisper. The hide shifts slightly, but the warmth inside remains stable, almost indifferent to the weather's attempts at intimidation. You're starting to realize that the genius of the tipi isn't just heat retention. It's balance between openness and protection, movement and stillness, earth and sky. The woman rises from her seat and moves toward a large parfleche container near the wall. The container is decorated with geometric patterns in bold colors, the kind that feel almost modern despite being far older than any of the design trends you've seen recycled on social media. She opens it and pulls out several folded hides. You watch as she unfolds one thick, fur-lined, and heavy enough that it could double as a personal winter fortress. She hands it to you with a small nod. You accept it gratefully, draping it across your lap. It's astonishingly warm, like wrapping yourself in the memory of a sunbeam. You nestle into it with the subtle grace of someone fully aware they are being blessed by the universe. The man kneels by the fire and begins adjusting the stones around the pit. You realize he's not just tending the fire, he's managing its behavior, curating how the heat spreads. He shifts a stone slightly outward, creating a little pocket where the flame leans and grows. A historical detail blooms in your mind. Many plains families used arrangements of stones, not just to contain the fire, but to direct airflow and regulate heat distribution inside the teepee. A well-placed stone could subtly alter the warmth in a specific part of the space. It's fire science without the lab coat. He points toward the warmed stone nestled near the sleeping child. This time, he picks up a second stone from the pit, wraps it briefly in cloth, and places it near your feet. The comfort is immediate. Your toes send grateful messages up your body, apologizing for ever doubting winter survival techniques. You realize that heated stones weren't just for sleeping. They traveled, sat by feet, warmed hands, and acted as personal radiators in a world before any fancy heating systems existed. The wind howls again, stronger this time. The tipi walls flutter once, twice, then settle. The smoke flaps shift, letting a faint wisp escape upward. You glance at the man, half expecting him to adjust them again, but he doesn't move. He's listening, waiting. And you realize, sometimes the wind gusts only briefly, and reacting too quickly could let in cold air unnecessarily. Patience is part of the technique. An obscure cultural tidbit curls into your thoughts. Some elders taught children to read the sound of the wind on the teepee, cover the pitch and pressure of it, not just for storm preparedness, but as a general skill of winter awareness. The tipi itself became a teacher, humming warnings and offering guidance. You imagine growing up inside these walls, learning to interpret their language like reading the mood of a trusted friend. The woman returns to her seat, now holding a bone needle and a length of sinew. She threads the sinew through the needle with one smooth motion that would make any modern crafter jealous. She lifts a hide sample thick, soft, pliable, and begins stitching with slow, careful precision. The sound is soothing, the quiet pull of sinew through hide, the soft rhythm of creation. Inside the tipi, work is never rushed. It matches the tempo of winter itself, steady, thoughtful, unhurried. She gestures subtly toward the needle, then toward the walls. She's telling you that winter repairs are constant and essential. Even the best-made tipi cover needs maintenance. Stitching small tears, reinforcing seams, checking the tie points where poles connect. A winter tipi is only as strong as its upkeep. You nod, absorbing the fact that survival isn't just about innovation, it's about attention. The man reaches for a small pouch near his seat. He opens it carefully and removes a handful of dried sage. He places some on a stone near the fire, where it begins to warm, releasing a soft, fresh aroma. The scent mingles with the smoky air, weaving into the space like a gentle thread. You lean in slightly without meaning to. It smells clean, comforting, almost like a subtle winter blessing. He notices your interest and gives you a small explanation. Sage was used often in winter for purification, scent, and comfort. Not every use was ceremonial. Sometimes it was simply practical, clearing the air in closed winter spaces or easing sore throats when steeped as tea. You file this into your growing archive of ingenious things people did long before electric humidifiers existed. A small gust of wind pushes against the tipi again, but this time the sound is different, lower, heavier. The man stands and steps outside. You follow, careful not to let cold surprise your lungs. The world outside is brighter now, the plains stretching endlessly in white and silver. Snow is falling lightly, drifting sideways on the wind, and you can hear the quiet groan of distant trees bending under frost. He points toward the top of the tipi, more specifically, toward the snow accumulating along the upper edge. A historical uncertainty slips into your mind. Some scholars debate exactly how often families had to manage snow loads on tipi coverings during deep winter, especially after storms. But today, you see it directly. He gently brushes off the snow so it doesn't weigh down the structure or freeze into solid crusts. It's small, simple, upkeep, but essential for maintaining warmth. As he works, you notice the entrance facing east, another intentional choice. Many tribes position tipis toward the rising sun for symbolic reasons, but in winter, it also offered morning warmth the moment light touched the cover. Practical and poetic, harmonized without contradiction. You step back inside and are met again by the deep, soothing warmth. The woman hands you a cup, this time something warm, brewed, lightly herbal. You sip it and feel your chest ease. The flavor is earthy, with a hint of something sweet. You have no idea what it is, but you absolutely support its continued existence. The fire's glow softens, the child stirs and rolls over. The warmed stone at your feet radiates steady comfort. You pull the fur blanket closer, letting it hold you. There's a sense of timelessness here. A feeling that winter isn't an enemy to conquer, but a partner to negotiate with patiently, intelligently, respectfully. You close, your eyes briefly, listening to the quiet breathing of the tipi. You feel safe. You feel warm. And you're nowhere near done learning. The warmth wraps around you like a slow exhale as you settle deeper into the tipi, letting the heavy hide blanket rest across your legs like a sleeping animal. The fire continues its steady performance, crackling just enough to remind you it's alive, but not loud enough to interrupt the quiet rhythm of the morning. The air inside feels layered, warm near the floor, mellow at your chest, and gently drifting upward toward the smoke hole, where it disappears into the pale winter sky. You feel the difference now that you've been inside long enough. The inner lining isn't just insulation. It's the unseen director of everything you're feeling. Warm air rises from the fire, brushes past your face, and pulls cooler air downward behind the lining. You can almost trace the flow with your eyes, like invisible currents following a dance they've practiced for centuries. The man returns to his place by the fire, brushing a faint dusting of snow from his shoulders. His steps make almost no sound. You, on the other hand, still sound like someone walking in borrowed winter skills, soft but uncertain, like a guest who hasn't quite figured out how to blend in with a space that breathes. The woman continues sewing beside you, her needle gliding through hide with that quiet, confident rhythm. She glances up once, her expression curious but peaceful. She's watching you learn, not in a judging way, but in that gentle, amused way someone watches a puppy trying to understand a staircase. You smile back, and she gives the faintest upward curve of her lips in return. The child finally stirs, shifting beneath his fur blankets like a tiny glacier rearranging itself. His eyes half open, he sits up, still wrapped like a winter burrito, and toddles over to the warmed stone. He places both small hands on it, sighs contentedly, and curls right back onto the ground, now in a new spot. You envy him, yet again. At this point, it's becoming a serious trend. Outside, the wind softens for a moment, one of those quiet pockets where the world holds its breath. Snowflakes drift lazily past the smoke hole, illuminated by the fire's glow. You watch them melt in the air before they reach the ground, tiny sparks of winter dissolving before they can touch anything. The man picks up a long stick and taps the fire gently. He isn't stoking it randomly, he's adjusting the burn rate. You notice how he nudges one log slightly inward while pulling another to the edge. A historical detail surfaces in your thoughts. Fire was the heart of the winter tipi, but it had to be managed with precision. The wrong wood, the wrong shape, or the wrong placement could create too much smoke, too much heat, or worse, uneven burn patterns that wasted fuel. Here, everything is intentional. The woman speaks softly, pointing toward the wooden poles supporting the tipi. Her language flows with a smooth rhythm, the cadence familiar even if the meaning escapes you. She traces a finger along the angle of one pole and then gestures upward toward the tipi's apex. She's explaining something, and the man helps translate with simple gestures. The poles aren't placed randomly. Their number, spacing, and splay angle all affect winter warmth. More poles make the structure tighter, more stable. Fewer poles create wider smoke channels, but less insulation. It's a balance. A winter tipi is tuned like an instrument. Historians still debate which tribes use standardized pole counts and which preferred flexible arrangements. But today, you see the living version of that conversation. The tipi you're in feels perfectly calibrated, like someone tuned it to the frequency of human comfort. The man sets aside the fire stick and lifts a small leather pouch. He opens it and shows you something inside. A handful of fine, dark powder. At first you think it's dirt, but he shakes his head and mimes blowing on a fire. Ah, this is powdered charcoal. An obscure winter trick. Some families kept powdered charcoal to sprinkle on embers during very cold mornings. It helped revive the fire quickly without needing to waste fresh wood. He sprinkles a pinch onto the coals. The fire responds immediately with a soft, deepening glow. It's a practical magic, one developed through long winters and careful observation. The woman finishes stitching the hide patch and ties the sinew with a firm knot. She holds the repaired hide up for a moment, inspecting her work with a serious expression, then nods once clearly satisfied. She hands the hide to the child, who immediately puts it on his head like a hat. It slips forward and covers his entire face. He stands still, confused but accepting. The woman sighs. You try not to laugh out loud. The man gives you a look that says, "Yes, this is normal." Outside, a faint crack pop echoes across the plains, ice shifting somewhere in the distance. The sound is hollow, like a tree trunk under tension. You glance toward the entrance, feeling the sudden crispness that always follows a temperature drop. The man notices too. He steps outside again, and you follow. The world is changing. The sky is grayer now, thickening like wool. Snowflakes have grown heavier, falling with more purpose. You hear the wind shifting direction east to north, a subtle but significant sign. The man scans the horizon, then points toward the smoke flaps at the top of the teepee. He adjusts them quickly, tightening one, loosening the other. The angle is now sharper, deflecting the incoming wind, so smoke is pulled upward instead of forced downward. It's a small shift, with a big impact the difference between breathing clean air and coughing through winter. A historical detail surfaces. Wind direction mattered immensely in winter camps, and families often reorganized or adjusted their tipis based on seasonal winds. Winter wasn't static. It changed its mind often. You step back inside, grateful for the warmth again. The tipi feels even cozier now that the storm is gathering. The fire flickers gently as the woman adds a new piece of wood, thicker, denser, cut for long burns. This is storm wood, you realize. A log meant to keep heat steady through unpredictable weather. The man returns with an armful of snow and places it near the entrance, an unexpected move. But then he takes small handfuls of snow and presses them along the outside base of the teepee. The cold seals the edges, creating a tighter draft barrier. Snow as insulation again. You add that to your growing folder titled Things Snow Can Do Besides Ruin Commutes. Once he's done, the tipi feels noticeably warmer. Even the air near the entrance softens. You lean back, letting the hide blankets sink around you as the fire glows brighter, the herbs near the door scenting the air, the child settling into another improbable sleeping position. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to winter breathe around you. You feel safe, you feel warm, and you feel the story deepening around you like another layer of hide pulled close for the long night ahead. The storm grows slowly, like a patient artist layering paint over the horizon. Inside the teepee, the light shifts, becoming softer, more golden, as the fire's glow becomes the main source of warmth and color. You nestle deeper into the heavy hide blanket, pulling it around your shoulders until you resemble an unusually cozy mountain. The air feels rich with heat, and the faint aroma of herbs warming near the flames. The woman rises gracefully, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and moves toward a small bundle tied neatly with strips of dyed sinew. She unties it with care and unfolds layers of cloth to reveal several polished bone tools, awls, needles, scrapers, each shaped and sharpened to a distinct purpose. The tools gleam softly in the firelight, looking simultaneously ancient and precise. You can almost feel the years of knowledge held in their smooth edges. She lifts a scraper, gestures toward the hide near her feet, and begins working it with long, even strokes. The sound, soft, rhythmic, steady, is almost hypnotic. The fire crackles beside it, the wind hums outside, and for a moment the entire teepee seems to fall into a gentle, calming cadence. It makes your eyelids heavier than you intended. You blink a little too slowly. The woman notices but says nothing. She probably assumes winter is defeating you. She is not wrong. The man sits down across from you, pulling a small, folded piece of leather from his belt. When he opens it, you see several flints and a small iron striker. He sets them aside, then gestures toward the fire pit, tapping the edge with one finger. You lean forward, curious. He's explaining another winter fact. Fire wasn't something you casually let die in midwinter. After all the effort of gathering wood, drying it, protecting it, managing smoke, letting the fire go out would mean starting from scratch in freezing wind, often with numb fingers and stubborn materials. Instead, families kept embers alive deliberately, banking them in ash overnight so the warmth would survive until morning. To demonstrate, he takes a small piece of charcoal, crumbles it slightly, and nestles it beneath a layer of warm ash near the fire's edge. Then he covers it gently, leaving just enough airflow to keep the ember quietly alive. An obscure tidbit emerges from your thoughts. Some families even carried embers with them when traveling in cold weather, wrapped carefully in insulating materials so they could start fires quickly at the next campsite. You imagine carrying a tiny glowing coal across winter plains, a pocket-sized sun, stubbornly refusing to die. The child awakens fully now, padding over to the fire with sleepy steps, his fur blanket trailing behind him like a cape. He rubs his eyes with both fists, peers at you suspiciously for a moment, then plops himself directly onto your lap without hesitation. You freeze, surprised. He seems satisfied with your warmth and makes no further effort to move. The man and woman watch with faint amusement. You have been adopted. You wrap part of the hide blanket around the child, and he settles immediately, nestled like a small, contented fox. You're not entirely sure how to feel about the responsibility, but the warmth is mutual. Your legs approve. Your heart softens. Your toes try to contribute, but remain mostly useless. Outside, the wind shifts again, this time more sharply. The teepee responds instantly. The walls bow slightly inward, the smoke hole whistles faintly, and the air inside chills by a few degrees despite the fire. The man stands, steps outside, and adjusts the flaps with a practiced, fluid motion. When he returns, he nods toward the entrance. He wants you to notice something. You follow him outside, careful not to jostle your new lap resident, who clings to you with sleepy tenacity. The cold air strikes your face like a reminder that nature is still in charge out here. The world is growing more muted, covered in a veil of thickening snow. You feel the wind brushing past you, stronger, colder, more insistent. The man taps the east side of the tipi, then circles around to the north side, where the wind now hits most directly. Snow is piling there. Because the tipi is circular, the wind doesn't slam into flat walls. It moves around the structure, distributing pressure more evenly. A historical fact settles in your mind. The conical design wasn't just elegant, it was aerodynamic, capable of withstanding strong prairie winds far better than many rectangular structures. You touch the hide wall and feel the vibration of the wind through your palm. A low hum, not a shudder. The snow build-up here doesn't threaten the tipi's shape. It actually adds another insulating layer. Winter becomes part of the shelter rather than the enemy. As the man clears a small drift from the entrance side, you notice another detail, a narrow trench carved into the snow, leading away from the door. It functions like a cold air drain. The heavier cold air sinks into the trench and moves outward instead of flooding into the warm interior. Another obscure winter trick, simple, effective, and shaped by generations living in partnership with the land. When you step back inside, the warmth is instantly restorative. The woman has placed another log on the fire, a thick one that burns long and slow. The smell deepens, rich and woody. You sit, and the child promptly reclaims your lap like he has a rental agreement. The woman begins packing a small set of items into a parfleche container. Dried meat, herbs, a bone needle, sinew, a flint kit, and a small bundle of feathers tied with red-dyed leather. She places them carefully, then ties the container shut. The man gestures toward the items, then toward the tipi walls. He's explaining that certain emergency supplies are always kept ready during winter storms, things needed to repair tiers, relight fires, treat minor ailments, or move quickly if the weather worsened suddenly. Winter required preparedness at all times. Historians still debate which items were universal across tribes and which were family-specific traditions. But the principle of readiness was constant. The child finally slides off your lap, settling beside the warmed stone again. You stretch your legs, grateful and unwilling to admit you lost circulation 10 minutes ago. The woman notices and gives you a smirk that says she knew exactly how numb you were. The storm continues outside, brushing the tipi with soft, steady fingers. Inside, the fire glows brighter, colors warm across the hides. The herbs scent the air, and the family moves with quiet, practiced calm. You realize, in this moment, that the real brilliance of winter tipi life isn't one single trick or design. It's the layering of dozens of small, clever adaptations, each shaping a winter home that feels impossibly warm. In a world defined by cold, you breathe deeply. The air is warm, fragrant, safe. Winter can do its worst. Inside the tipi, you are held. The firelight flickers against the inner lining as the storm deepens outside, creating soft waves of gold and amber that ripple across the curved walls. You lean back slightly, settling into the furs, feeling the warmth resting against your skin like a gentle, steady hand. The tipi breathes around you, expanding slightly with each gust of wind, then settling again into perfect stillness. It feels alive, tuned to the rhythm of the weather, in a way that modern buildings, with all their straight lines and rigid corners, never quite manage. The man kneels near the entrance, brushing aside a thin layer of snow that has crept inward beneath the flap. He takes a handful of the packed snow from earlier and smooths it along the base of the wall again, reinforcing the insulation. Snow is weatherproofing. You're still amused by the concept, but the more you see it, the more it makes elegant sense. It seals cracks. It blocks drafts. It works with the tipi instead of against it. The woman gestures for you to come closer. She points to the top of the tipi, then draws a circle in the air with her finger. At first, you think she's describing the smoke hole, but then she taps lightly on the inner lining near your shoulder. She's explaining something subtle, something you hadn't noticed before. The lining isn't simply hung in winter. It's shaped differently. During warm seasons, the lining tends to be higher and more open, allowing more airflow. But in winter, families lowered the lining and tied it more snugly, forming a tighter convection chamber that channels warm air upward with greater efficiency. A historical detail clicks into place. Winter linings were sometimes double-layered or overlapped, creating pockets of trapped warm air, a natural insulation system long before we invented fiberglass or foam. She pulls one edge of the tech lining gently, showing you the hidden gap behind it. where cold air moves down. You feel a faint current, cool, steady, purposeful. The air doesn't enter the living space at all. It slips beneath the lining, traveling down to the ground where it stays low and quiet before feeding the fire's base. You realize you're sitting inside a functional airflow diagram. The woman chuckles softly at your expression. She knows exactly when someone is having their mind blown by things she grew up knowing intuitively. She taps the lining once more, nodding as if to say, "See? It works." The child toddles over again, but this time he's carrying something, a loosely woven grass mat, folded in half. He hands it to you with the confidence of someone who believes you know what to do with it. You do not. You look at the man for instructions. He smiles and gestures for you to spread it on the ground near your seat. When you do, the purpose becomes clear. The mat lifts your feet slightly off the ground, reducing contact with the cold earth beneath the floor coverings. An obscure tidbit unfolds in your mind. Some families used layers of mats, sagebrush, or woven grasses beneath winter furs to add warmth, absorb moisture, and create a softer living surface. Winter floors were layered just as carefully as the walls. You wiggle your toes experimentally. They approve of the development. The storm outside shifts again, the wind taking on a more serious tone. Snow hits the tipi with a soft hiss, piling harder against the north side. The walls tremble slightly, not in a fearful way, but like a tree swaying in a strong breeze. The conical shape is doing its work, shedding most of the wind upward and around, rather than letting it slam directly into a flat surface. A faint thump echoes from somewhere outside. The man tenses slightly, listening. After a moment, he relaxes. He mimics the gesture of a horse brushing against something. You picture one of the horses backed into a snowdrift, adjusting its position. Winter is hard on everyone. The woman rises again and takes a long, supple hide from a storage area. It's embroidered with quillwork geometric patterns in red, yellow, and deep blue. She places it along the north side of the tipi, tying it neatly over the existing lining. It adds a layer of both beauty and insulation. You admire the colors, the craftsmanship, the quiet act of reinforcing the shelter for the storm. Historians still debate how standardized decorative winter linings were, whether certain patterns had symbolic meaning or were simply personal preference. But here, in this quiet space, the distinction doesn't matter. The lining is functional, beautiful, and warm. The child begins humming a soft tune, an almost melodic pattern of rising and falling notes. It's soothing, repetitive, the kind of sound that naturally calms the air around it. The woman joins in with a harmony so gentle that you feel the vibrations more than hear them. The tipi becomes a chamber of quiet song. The man adds fresh wood to the fire, but this time he chooses two different pieces, one thick, one thin. You watch carefully. The thin one catches quickly, brightening the flame. The thick one burns slowly, maintaining long-term heat. It's a balancing act. Winter fires weren't about dramatics, they were about reliability. He adjusts the logs into a triangular formation. You ask with your eyes again. He smiles and explains through gesture. This shape channels heat toward the center, while directing smoke upward in a smooth, narrow column. A well-shaped fire burns cleaner, hotter, and uses less fuel. Once again, the tipi teaches you something. A sudden gust of wind pushes the walls inward, not dangerously, but noticeably. The fire flickers. A bit of cold air sneaks through the entrance flap. The man stands, pulls the flap tight, and adds a weighted hide over it for the storm. Instantly, the draft disappears, replaced by a deepened warmth. The child climbs back into your lap without hesitation. At this point, you're resigned to being a very important piece of living furniture. The woman gives you an approving nod, as if successfully passing the lap test is a rite of passage. Inside the tipi, the storm becomes background music, a soft percussion of snow on hide, wind against poles, the faint groan of distant ice. The fire provides the counterpoint. Together, they create a symphony of winter and warmth. You glance upward again, watching smoke drift in an elegant spiral toward the flaps. The air is so clear inside the tipi, it's easy to forget there's a fire burning constantly. Winter tipis weren't smoky, suffocating places. They were well ventilated, intentionally engineered spaces where airflow was mastered long before engineers arrived with blueprints. The warmth deepens. The song fades into quiet. The child drifts to sleep once more, his small weight warming your legs. You breathe deeply, letting the Scent of herbs and hide and fire settle into your senses. Outside, winter rages. Inside, winter is tamed, and your journey settles further into the heart of tipi life. The balance between harshness and ingenuity, between cold winds and warm fires, between vast open plains and the small, glowing universe of a winter home. The storm presses harder now, as if winter is testing every seam of the world just to see who flinches. The tipi does not. It sways gently, breathes deeply, and holds its warmth like a quiet promise. Inside, the fire burns with patient confidence, casting soft gold across the walls. The snow outside hisses faintly as it hits the hide, a whispery chorus that fills the silence. You shift your weight carefully, so you don't disturb the sleeping child curled in your lap. Though honestly, this boy could probably sleep through an avalanche. He snores once, softly, and tightens his grip on your sleeve. You have been chosen as the official nap surface of the day. Congratulations. The woman finishes tying the decorative winter lining along the north wall and dusts her hands together in quiet satisfaction. The colors glow warmly in the firelight, deep reds and yellows dancing like embers across the soft hide. It makes the tipi feel even more alive, more layered, more intentional. She returns to the fire and picks up a small clay pot, lifting it carefully from the coals. The heat radiates off it in gentle waves. She sets it near you and gestures with a small smile, indicating you should warm your hands. When you do, the heat soaks into your palms, settling deep into your bones. You realize just how cold you still were, even after all this time inside. The man steps back inside, with a rush of cold air clinging to him. Snowflakes dust his shoulders, melting almost instantly as the warm interior embraces him. He brushes the remaining flakes onto the ground and closes the flap tightly behind him. The snow outside has become thicker, pearl white, sheets carried sideways by the wind. He sits across from you and picks up a small hide bag decorated with delicate quill work. From inside, he draws out a series of long, thin sticks, some peeled smooth, others still retaining bits of bark. You watch as he arranges them neatly, almost ceremonially. He's preparing fire sticks. A major historical detail surfaces. Many plains tribes kept carefully selected fire-starting materials that behave predictably in winter. Willow, cottonwood, or aspen might be used for fireboards or spindle sticks in friction fire methods. Even if embers were usually carried, backup fire-starting kits were essential. He demonstrates briefly, placing one stick across his knee and pointing to its shape slightly curved, polished from years of handling. He mimics rolling it between his palms with gentle downward pressure onto an imaginary fireboard. The woman chuckles quietly. She knows better than to let him start an actual demonstration while the tipi is already warm and calm. Still, you appreciate the lesson. You understand now that winter survival wasn't a matter of chance, it was a matter of preparation layered on preparation. The child shifts again, his tiny fingers gripping your clothing like you might float away if he loosens his hold. The woman raises an eyebrow, amusement clear in her gaze. You shrug helplessly. She shakes her head with a smile that translates roughly to, "He has decided you are furniture. Accept your fate." You do. The fire crackles loudly for a moment as a sap pocket in the wood pops. The sound echoes softly up the tipi's poles. The man pokes the wood lightly, adjusting the logs so they burn evenly. He tilts one piece just slightly, creating a narrow channel of airflow beneath it. The flames brighten in appreciation. Then he gestures toward the door flap. You follow his gaze. The entrance lining has been lowered fully now, resting snug against the ground. A weighted hide is tied over the outside. But he shows you something new. A narrow space deliberately left near the top of the entrance, just under the hide cover. It's small, barely the width of your hand, but it matters. This tiny gap lets a faint trace of fresh air enter near the ceiling, creating a gentle upward draw that helps the smoke travel cleanly out the top. Without it, the smoke could stagnate, even in a well-constructed winter tipi. Historians still debate how often this high vent was used or how standardized it was, but today you see the practical version. It keeps the air pure while the cold stays out. You glance upward. The smoke spirals in its familiar dance, rising in a smooth, uninterrupted column. The flaps above hold firm against the storm, angled perfectly to guide the smoke toward the sky. Your attention shifts as the woman ushers you toward the back of the tipi. behind the fire pit. She shows you a section of the floor covered with thick layers of brush, hides, and woven mats. She taps the ground with her foot. It's not soft like a cushion, but it's warmer and drier than bare earth. An obscure cultural tidbit settles in your mind. Some families laid down layers of sagebrush beneath the floor coverings in winter because it acted as both insulation and a natural insect deterrent. Winter might chase most insects away, but the practice also kept the floor aromatic and dry. You take a deep breath. The faint scent of sage still lingers there. The man then lifts the flap of a storage area made of layered hides. You hadn't noticed it before. Inside are bundles of dried meat, roots, berries, and herbs, neatly tied and labeled with patterns in the quill work. Winter food storage wasn't random. It was compartmentalized, protected, and organized. He shows you a bundle of fat rendered and hardened. He explains with a gesture that this fat could be added to food for extra calories, burned in lamps, or used in cold weather ointments to protect skin from cracking wind. You realize that fat, it wasn't just nourishment, it was winter's multi-tool. He places the bundle back carefully. The child finally wakes enough to stand, stretches with a noise halfway between a sigh and a squeak, and toddles toward the fire. He picks up a stick, small, harmless, and begins drawing patterns in the dusty ground. Circles, lines, squiggles. He pauses occasionally to consider his work like a tiny philosopher. You smile, then realize you recognize one of his shapes. He's drawing the shape of the tipi itself, a cone with a little curl of smoke on top. Even toddlers know the heart of winter life. The storm outside deepens further, a steady pulse of winter against the world. But inside? Inside is warm, steady, intentional. The woman ladles something from the pot into a small bowl and offers it to you. It's warm, slightly sweet, thick with winter roots and herbs. You sip it, and the warmth sinks through your chest like sinking into a bath. Your muscles loosen. Your breath slows. Everything around you feels connected. The fire, the lining, the airflow, the snow-packed walls, the quiet hum of the storm. You realize something important. A winter tipi wasn't just shelter. It was a system, a breathing, adapting collaboration between people and the land. And sitting here, wrapped in furs, warmed by stone and fire, surrounded by the soft rhythm of a family preparing for a long storm, you feel protected in a way you didn't expect. The storm can howl, the snow can fall, but inside this tipi, you are warm, you are safe, and the journey continues deeper into the winter world. The storm settles into its long rhythm, wrapping the world in white, while the tipi's interior glows like a small sun tucked into the earth. The poles overhead creak softly in the wind, not in fear, but in the calm, familiar complaint of wood doing its job. The fire keeps its steady heartbeat, and the air inside feels layered with comfort, warm at the floor, rising upward in smooth, invisible spirals. The child has now claimed a spot near the fire pit, placing his little grass mat next to the warmed stone like a tiny winter throne. He sits on it cross-legged, looking both serious and cozy. Occasionally, he pokes the ground with a stick, drawing elaborate patterns that he seems very committed to. His fur blanket drapes over his shoulders like a ceremonial robe. You're not sure whether he's playing or performing a sacred toddler ritual. Possibly both. The woman finishes stirring the pot above the fire and sets it aside to cool, steam rising in lazy curls toward the smoke hole. She moves with the ease of someone who has done this 1,000 mornings before you. The man checks the fire again, always checking, always adjusting. Every few minutes, he shifts a log, brushes an ember, or clears ash from a channel. Not out of worry, out of knowledge. A winter fire is a living thing, and it behaves best when someone understands its moods. He gestures toward the smoke hole high above, and you tilt your head to watch. The snow has begun drifting across the opening, making the column of smoke waver just slightly as it climbs. The flaps are angled perfectly to prevent snow from falling straight inside, but they also maintain just enough space for the upward draw. He mimes the action of adjusting them from inside, using the long poles to push or pull the hide. It's a delicate art, requiring both strength and finesse. A historical detail clicks into place. During winter storms, smoke flap management could become a near-constant task, especially when winds shifted fast. Families took turns tending the fire and the flaps, ensuring warmth and clean air continued without interruption. You imagine someone half asleep at night, rolling over just enough to nudge a flap or poke at the fire. Winter life was restful, but never passive. The woman beckons you toward the back of the teepee again. This time, she lifts a hide drape hanging near the sleeping area to reveal something unexpected. A small, shallow pit dug into the earth. It's not large, maybe the size of a broad bowl and lined with stones. She gestures for you to kneel and feel the air rising from it. You do. It's warm. The stones are warm. The entire pit radiates subtle heat, like a miniature oven beneath the floor. A major historical detail lands softly in your thoughts. Some winter tipis used shallow subfloor pits or hearth hollows, lined with heated stones to retain warmth during long storms or overnight. The stones heated slowly during the day and then released that stored heat, gradually for hours. It wasn't universal, but it was ingenious. You realize that while the fire is the obvious source of warmth, the teepee is full of quiet, clever strategies working all at once. Behind you, the child begins humming again, soft, meandering notes that seem to wander up the poles and swirl with the smoke. The sound blends with the wind outside and the fire crackling beside you. For a moment, the entire teepee becomes one unified sound, warm, round, and calming. The man comes over and kneels beside the pit, tapping one of the stones with the back of his knuckles. He listens, nods, and gestures toward the fire. You follow his meaning. The stones are ready to be rotated. He takes one hot stone from the pit, with tongs made of bent willow, and moves it closer to the fire. Then he takes a fresh, cold stone from outside, snow melting instantly under his fingers, and places it into the pit to heat. You watch carefully as he repeats the process. It's a quiet cycle. Hot stones, swapped with cold ones, keeping the pit warm throughout the storm. An obscure cultural tidbit slips into place. Some families even use those warmed stones at night beneath sleeping robes, creating long-lasting warmth without needing a roaring fire. You suddenly feel a deep appreciation for stones. You did not expect that today. The woman settles beside you again, lifting a small pouch from her lap. She opens it and reveals dried leaves, pale, delicate, fragrant. She gestures toward the pot cooling near the fire and adds a pinch of the leaves. The air fills with a soft, earthy aroma that reminds you of late autumn afternoons and distant pine forests. She hands you a small cup when the tea is ready. It warms your palms, then your chest, then your entire sense of being. You sip slowly, letting the flavor wash over you. Slightly bitter, slightly sweet, grounding. She explains, through gesture and a few quiet words, that the tea helps soothe breathing during winter storms. Historians still debate the exact plant combinations different tribes used for winter teas, but they agree on one thing: these herbal brews were both practical and comforting. As you drink, the storm outside suddenly shifts. A gust hits the north side of the tipi with force, followed by a low booming sound as snow shifts on the open plains. The hide walls tremble, but the poles hold firm, anchored by decades of refined design. The tipi sways once, twice, then settles like a dancer adjusting their balance. The child looks up, wide-eyed for a moment, then, satisfied that the tipi is fine, returns to drawing circles in the dirt. The man, however, stands and listens carefully. The woman joins him. They exchange a few quiet words, then move purposefully to the back wall. You watch as they check the tie points that hold the poles together. They tug gently at the inner lining, making sure it stays tight. They retie a few straps. Their movements are efficient, almost rehearsed. It dawns on you that winter teepee maintenance is not something done only once. It's constant micro-adjustments, reading the weather like language, responding calmly to the wind's requests. When the work is done, the woman returns to her seat and resumes stitching a hide. The man sits beside her and begins shaping a small antler tool with a stone scraper, sending tiny curls of white dust into the air. The sound blends gently with the fire. The tipi feels warmer again, steadier, more secure. You lean back, and the child leans against you, his head knocking lightly into your ribs. He sighs, content, and reaches for your hand. You let him take it. The fire dims slightly as the logs shift. The man leans forward, brushes the embers, and adjusts the wood. The flames rise again almost immediately, clean, bright, obedient. You realize how much intelligence lives in this place. Not loud knowledge, not written knowledge, quiet knowledge, carried through generations, woven into the hides, the poles, the stones, the very shape of the tipi. Outside, the storm rages. Inside, the home breathes. And you, tucked into its warm heart, continue your journey deeper into winter life. The storm outside grows into a steady white curtain, the kind that blurs the line between sky and earth until everything feels like a single humming surface of snow. But inside the tipi, the world remains warm and richly layered. Firelight flickers across the hides, the scent of herbs hangs gently in the air, and the people around you move with a calmness that winter can't shake loose. You shift slightly, stretching your legs, and the child who has apparently decided you are part of the furniture slides down your side and lands on the furs with a soft thwomp. He blinks up at you, surprised at his sudden relocation, then nods as if he planned the whole thing. He scoots over to the fire and resumes drawing circles in the dirt, this time adding dots around them in what you interpret as either a complex symbolic system or just child-level enthusiasm for circles. The woman sits beside you, checking her bone needle for sharpness by running her thumb along it with practiced care. She gestures for you to watch closely. Then she takes a small strip of hide and folds it twice, stitching through the thickness as easily as someone sewing cloth. You can feel the durability in every movement. Winter tools had to be trustworthy, strong enough to last the season, light enough to pack, and flexible enough for countless tasks. The man retrieves something from a bundle behind him, a piece of hide stretched across a wooden frame. When he sets it by the fire, you see what it is. A little shield, decorated with painted symbols. He taps one edge of it and points to the outside. You recognize it at once. This is the winter wind indicator, the object you saw earlier hanging near another tipi entrance. He lays it across his lap and begins repainting one of the old faded designs. The paint is made from natural pigments, yellow from ochre, red from iron-rich clay, black from charcoal. The colors deepen as they warm near the fire, turning vivid against the hide. You feel oddly honored to watch him restoring something that holds both practicality and meaning. A historical detail drifts into your thoughts. Painted designs were often repaired or refreshed during winter because the cold months offered long stretches indoors, the perfect time for maintaining tools, containers, quivers, and ceremonial items. Winter wasn't just about survival, it was also about preparation and creativity. The child moves closer to the man, watching with round eyes. He reaches out to touch the paint, and the man gives him a quick, gentle look that communicates, "Don't touch that unless you want red hands for the next 3 days." The child withdraws his hand. Barely. The woman lifts another hide from her storage area, this one thick, shaggy, and edged with quillwork patterns. She spreads it along the floor behind the parterre, sleeping area, smoothing it with both hands. You notice how many layers already cover that part of the floor: woven grass mats, sagebrush, soft hides, fur blankets. It's a quiet, brilliant reminder that winter floors were designed like winter clothing, layered for insulation, comfort, and dryness. She tosses you a smaller fur, gesturing for you to put it behind your back as you sit. When you do, warmth floods instantly along your spine, traveling downward like a gentle sigh. You had no idea your back was that cold. Apparently, your spine had been filing complaints you didn't read. Outside, a sudden gust of wind slams against the north wall. The tipi bows inward slightly, responding not with panic, but with elasticity. The poles absorb the force and flex harmoniously like a tree bending instead of breaking. The snowpack around the base muffles the sound, turning the gust into a low, rumbling pressure rather than a sharp strike. The man stands again, listening carefully. Then, he steps to the edge of the tipi and taps the hide lightly with his knuckles. The sound is muted. He nods, satisfied. The snow insulation is holding well. He gestures for you to come closer to the wall. You place your hand against the hide. It's cold but not freezing. The insulation layers are doing their quiet work, forming a barrier between you and the storm. Then he taps the inner lining with one finger. You touch it. Completely warm. A major historical detail warms your awareness. That lining layer wasn't just for airflow. It was a direct thermal buffer, one that kept radiant heat inside and prevented cold air from touching the living space. Winter linings were genius. Unapologetically genius. The woman hums softly as she works, a slow, rising melody that sounds like the warmth of a good cup of tea. The child joins in again, though his contribution is mostly enthusiastic random notes. The man keeps painting. The fire crackles. The winter world hisses and roars beyond the walls. For a moment, everything synchronizes into a soft, peaceful flow. The woman then pulls out a small bundle tied with sinew. She unwraps it carefully, revealing a collection of dried roots, berries, and plants. She separates them into two piles, one for cooking, one for medicine. Then she opens a tiny pouch filled with something powdery and pale. She gestures. Inhale. You do. The smell is sharp, almost minty, with a hint of something earthy beneath it. It clears your nose instantly, as if winter itself briefly stepped aside to let you breathe. The woman smiles at your expression. An obscure winter fact settles into your mind. Certain plants were dried specifically for their effects on breathing during long winter storms. Some could be burned gently for scent, others brewed into teas, and still others simply sniffed to encourage clear airways. Winter wasn't just cold, it was dry and heavy. Plants helped. The man finishes repainting the wind indicator and lifts it up to admire his work. The symbols glow in the firelight circles, 2 arrows, a curved line, and a stylized bird. You ask with your eyes what it means. He traces the bird, then gestures upward, then taps the arrow that curves in a spiral. A scholar's uncertainty swirls through your thoughts. Some designs were purely personal, others symbolic, and others functional. No one knows exactly how often these designs communicated precise meaning. But here, in this tipi, the meaning is simple. This shield warns of wind's direction and temperament. When it moves, the family adjusts the flaps. The child climbs into your lap again without warning. You brace for the weight, rearranging the fur behind you. He leans against you with a heavy sigh, staring at the fire like it's telling him a bedtime story without words. You run a hand gently across his head, unsure if that's culturally appropriate but hoping warmth is a universal language. He nuzzles your arm in response. Accepted. The man smiles. The woman nods. The tipi feels even warmer. The storm outside thickens into a steady roar. The walls ripple, the smoke hole flaps flutter, and snow packs tighter around the base. The fire rises and falls with controlled grace. You take another long breath. The scent of sage and smoke fills your lungs. The warmth presses into your body. The family moves as one quiet machine of winter wisdom. And you, visitor, outsider, accidental babysitter, feel a deep, settling peace. Inside the tipi, winter cannot reach you. The storm settles into a quieter phase now, not weaker, just steadier. Like winter has found a comfortable rhythm for shaking the world. Snow moves across the plains in long, sweeping sheets, but inside the tipi, the fire's glow creates its own season. Warm, bright, steady. You feel suspended between worlds, a frozen landscape outside, a pocket of living heat inside. The child is still in your lap, though he's now doing that slow, rhythmic sway that toddlers do right, before they fall asleep again. His little head nods forward, jerks up, nods again. You place an arm around him instinctively, and he gives in, sinking into your chest with a tiny sigh. You didn't set out to become a human pillow today, but fate apparently had other plans. The woman watches the two of you with mild amusement as she sorts through a bundle of dried roots. She taps your knee gently to get your attention, then gestures toward the roots, long, pale ones, knobby and firm. She presses one into your hand. You smell it. It's sharp, almost spicy. She mimes rubbing it on her throat, then points to the child. Ah, medicine for winter coughs. A historical detail comes to you like a warm ember. Many plains tribes used dried roots, especially wild licorice, mint family plants, or certain prairie herbs, to treat throat irritation from smoke, dry air, or cold wind. Some were chewed, others brewed into tea, and a few were rubbed into the skin to ease breathing. You hand the root back carefully, respecting its importance. The man sits down beside the fire again and picks up a small piece of hide. He begins cutting it into strips with a stone-edged knife. The motion is smooth and precise, each strip coming out identical in width. He ties one strip around a wooden peg, demonstrating how the attachments work on the winter tipi cover. You watch as he loops it around a small replica pole and tightens it with a twist of his wrist. The tie holds firm, even when he tugs it sharply. He points to you, your hands, and then mimics tying one. A lesson. You accept the hide strip, feeling the smoothness of its flesh side and the slightly rough grain of the outer side. He shows you again. Loop, twist, pull. You follow along. Your first attempt is passable. Your second attempt is tangled. Your third attempt earns a small nod from the man. You file this away under skills I didn't know I was going to need but I'm proud of having. The child wakes enough to notice your new skill and claps once before, falling instantly back to sleep. You are flattered. The fire crackles softly, sending occasional sparks upward. They rise quickly before disappearing through the smoke hole. You look up. Snowflakes drift downward but melt before reaching the fire's warmth. The poles are dark outlines against the dim light, meeting at the top like the ribs of a great animal sheltering you. The woman moves to the storage area behind her and removes a small rawhide drum painted with red and yellow geometric shapes. She taps it lightly with her fingertips, producing a soft, heartbeat-like rhythm. The sound blends beautifully with the storm outside. It's not loud enough to be a performance, more like a casual winter lullaby. She hands it to the child, who wakes up just enough to tap it once. Then he hands it back and buries his face in your coat. The woman laughs under her breath. The man takes the drum next and shows you something subtle. He taps a part of the drumhead near the edge, producing a higher, tauter tone. Then he taps near the center, deeper, more resonant. He gestures to the fire. Heat affects sound. Too much moisture makes the drum dull. Too much heat makes it brittle. Winter drum care mattered. You notice he places the drum on a thick fur, a safe distance from the fire. Everything has its exact place in winter. He then reaches for another tool, a long, curved piece of bone, polished smooth. He uses it to soften a strip of hide, stretching and scraping it until it becomes more pliable. The rhythm of the motion is serene: press, drag, lift, press, drag, lift. Winter allowed time for maintenance and refinement, not chaos. An obscure cultural tidbit appears gently. Some families softened hides during winter evenings, not just for clothing, but for lining repair, cradleboard padding, and winter moccasins. Winter wasn't idle, it was productive in a quiet, centered way. The woman begins speaking softly, telling a story the words you don't fully understand, but the tone is soothing. She gestures occasionally toward the child, then toward the storm outside, then toward the fire. You catch fragments of meaning. Animals, winter journeys, a clever fox, a strong wind. You understand enough. It's a winter story, passed through many generations. Historians still debate how widely stories and songs varied between families and bands, how they changed through time, region, and memory. But no historian doubts their importance. Winter was story season. Long, cold nights became warm with words. You close your eyes briefly, letting her voice roll over you. The fire's warmth spreads through your chest, soft and grounding. The child's breathing slows against you. The tipi hums faintly with the storm's presence. Suddenly, the tipi door flap flexes inward. A strong gust hits the entrance. The man rises quickly and adjusts the weighted hide outside. The door flap settles. He taps the snow piled at the base with his foot and nods in satisfaction. The entrance has been sealed well, but Winter likes to test its handiwork. He sits again, and this time pulls closer. A small wooden bowl filled with something dark and sticky, pitch. You recognize the faint scent. It's pine or spruce resin. He dips a wooden tool into it and begins sealing a tiny crack in one of the inner poles. You watch closely. The pitch warms, softens, fills the crack, and hardens almost instantly against the cold air. Ingenious, durable, simple. You wonder how many winter nights were spent doing such meticulous tasks. You feel a tap on your leg. The woman hands you a small bit of hide, then mimes rubbing it with something. She points to the pitch. She's showing you how winter waterproofing works. She rubs a thin layer of the warm pitch onto the hide, then stretches it, then lays it near the fire to settle. Winter gear needed regular reproofing to stay strong and weather-resistant. You imitate her movements. Your hide comes out a little lumpy. She smooths it with 2 fingers and pats your hand gently, as if to say, "Good try. Keep practicing. Maybe stick to watching for now." The child stirs again, turning his face upward to look at you. He yawns wide enough to resemble a small, sleepy bear. Then he curls into your chest and falls instantly back asleep. Apparently, you've been promoted to trusted hibernation rock. Outside, the storm eases into a long, steady wind. Snow continues to fall, but the gusts are gentler now, more like a song than a warning. Inside, the fire glows steady. The tea warms your hands. The family works and rests, moving in harmony with winter's pace. You feel wrapped not only in hides and warmth, but in a sense of belonging. The tipi's warmth deepens. The world softens. The storm outside becomes a living presence, steady, whispering, persistent but no longer angry. It moves around the tipi with a soft, swirling rhythm, like winter itself has settled into a quiet conversation with the earth. Inside, the warmth feels deeper than before, richer somehow, the result of countless small adjustments. The fire carefully tended, the lining snug, the snow packed at the base, the floor layered in brush and hides. You shift your position just enough to restore circulation in your leg, the one currently serving as a pillow for the child who has adopted you. He stirs briefly, but does not wake, his small hands curled into fists near his chin. You feel the gentle weight of his trust, soft and warm against your chest. The woman sets aside the drum and picks up a bundle wrapped in decorated hide. She opens it slowly, revealing an assortment of winter moccasins, tiny ones, larger ones, some lined with fur, others with thick grass. Each pair is carefully shaped and embroidered, the designs both beautiful and practical. She chooses one pair and hands it to you. They're small, child-sized, with a layer of soft rabbit fur inside. When you touch them, the warmth sinks instantly into your fingers. She gestures toward the child, then points at your own feet. You understand. Winter moccasins need to be kept dry, warm, and rotated often. No one, not even a child, wears damp footwear in the cold. A historical detail settles into your mind. Winter moccasins were often double-layered and stuffed with dry grass or fur to trap heat. They were changed frequently, sometimes several times a day, to ensure warmth and avoid frostbite. Foot care wasn't optional. It was essential. The man, meanwhile, begins scraping the inside of a partially prepared hide with a long, curved bone tool. Each stroke produces a soft, rasping sound, gentle and rhythmic. He works in slow, even motions, removing fat and membrane, ensuring the hide will dry evenly. You watch the precision of his movements, the way he angles the tool for maximum effect without cutting too deep. He taps the hide and gestures toward the fire, explaining through gesture that winter hide work relies on controlling moisture. Too close to the fire makes the hide brittle. Too far makes it prone to mold. There is a perfect zone where warmth and airflow balance each other, and he has found it by instinct. You look around the teepee and finally understand that winter life here isn't about enduring the cold, it's about mastering it. The child shifts again, blinking awake. He looks up at you with an expression that says he's half asleep and half offended at the concept of consciousness. Then he sits upright, wraps his tiny fur blanket around his shoulders, and toddles toward the woman. She hands him a small wooden bowl filled with warm broth. He drinks it slowly, eyes half closed, savoring the heat. After a minute, he offers the bowl to you. You accept it with a thank you nod. The broth is rich and savory, infused with herbs and fat, perfect winter fuel. As you sip it, the warmth spreads through you like sunlight drifting down your spine. Your stomach, previously focused on staying alive, suddenly remembers it enjoys good food. The woman watches your reaction with the soft pride of someone who cooks to survive and to comfort. Outside, a faint cracking sound echoes through the plains, a massive sheet of ice shifting at a distant river. The sound rolls across the land like thunder beneath snow. The man pauses his work, listening, gauging. Then he nods. Not a threat, just winter adjusting its posture. He gestures for you to join him near the smoke hole. You tilt your head upward as he points at the flaps. Snow has begun to accumulate along the edges, not enough to block the opening, but enough to require attention. He uses a long pole to tap the outside flap, dislodging snow so the smoke can escape freely. A scholarly uncertainty swirls into your thoughts. Some accounts suggest that winter smoke flap angles were taught meticulously to young people. Others claim they were learned through experience alone. Watching him now, you suspect the truth is somewhere in between. You learn by doing, and by watching someone who speaks the language of wind and fire fluently. He hands you the pole. You nearly drop the pole. He raises an eyebrow. You try again, gripping it firmly. He points upward. You lift the pole toward the flap, using just enough pressure to nudge it. A small puff of snow falls through the opening and disappears in the warm air. The smoke rises smoothly again. He gives you a short nod of approval. You accept your victory. It is small but meaningful, like winning a snowball fight against the wind. The child claps once, though it's unclear if he understands what happened. He probably just enjoys clapping. You clap back. He beams. The woman begins preparing something new, something you haven't seen yet. She takes a small hide pouch from a shelf and empties its contents onto a flat surface. Smooth stones, each about the size of a walnut, with faint char marks. She places them near the fire, warming them slowly. Then she takes a length of cloth and begins wrapping the stones one by one. You watch curiously as she continues wrapping until each stone is bundled like a tiny gift. Then she hands one to the child. He places it under his fur blanket and sighs with exaggerated satisfaction. Ah. Heated stones, portable warmth units, the winter equivalent of personal heaters long before electricity existed. A lesser-known winter tidbit surfaces. These heated stone bundles could be carried under robes, placed in sleeping areas, or even kept in pockets during travel. They held heat for hours, releasing it gradually. The woman hands one to you. You slip it under your blanket. The warmth spreads instantly, soothing your stomach and lower back. You had no idea how much you needed this until now. The storm intensifies outside for a moment, brushing the tipi with a deep, low rumble. The walls bow inward slightly, then return to shape. The poles groan softly. But the warmth never falters. The lining doesn't shift. The fire doesn't waver. The tipi, like the people within it, knows how to endure. You take another sip of the broth. The heat spreads through your chest. The child sits beside you now, tapping a small pattern in the dirt with his fingertips. The woman begins humming again, a low, soothing melody. The man adds a second log to the fire, angled carefully to maintain airflow. Everything here has rhythm. Everything cooperates. You exhale slowly, letting the hidden stress drain from your shoulders. You didn't realize how tightly you've been carrying the cold. But now, wrapped in this living shelter, warmed by stone and broth and fire, surrounded by people who have mastered winter through generations of wisdom, you feel something shift. Not just warmth, belonging. As the storm whispers around the teepee, the fire glows brighter, and your breath settles into a quieter rhythm. The storm outside has softened into a steady hush, like a giant blanket of snow being gently shaken across the plains. Every now and then, a gust rolls past and makes the tipi walls flex in a slow, practiced sway, but the structure holds with effortless grace, like a seasoned dancer who knows exactly how to lean into the wind without losing balance. Inside, the warmth has become its own atmosphere. Layers of rising air drift toward the smoke hole in a smooth spiral, and the fire burns with the steady confidence of a companion who intends to be here all night. You feel its heat on your face, the heavy hide blanket across your legs, and the gentle pressure of the child leaning against your side, drawing warmth as naturally as breathing. He shows you his latest masterpiece in the dirt, a circle with a small inverted V on top. You blink. He pats it proudly. Ah, it's a tipi. You nod approvingly. He beams the way only children who know they've communicated something important do. The woman sits nearby, holding a length of softened hide stretched over her knee, with a small awl in one hand and sinew in the other. She works on stitching a repair, a small seam near the edge that must have worn from long use. She uses a quick double-stitch pattern, pulling the sinew tight so the seam lies flush and strong. You watch the method, hypnotized by its precision. A historical detail eases into your thoughts. Winter was the season when clothing, tools, containers, and hides were repaired and reinforced. Long nights offered time for the slow tasks, sewing, beading, quill work, hide scraping, that kept the family's equipment reliable for the coming seasons. The man sits cross-legged on the opposite side of the fire, shaping a curved piece of wood. It's thin but sturdy, about the length of your arm. He uses a small flint blade to shave it in long, thin curls that drift into the fire and vanish. You watch the wood slowly take shape a bow stave. You realize this isn't a casual winter project. This is important work. He holds up the stave for you to see, then bends it slightly with his hands. You can tell he's testing its flexibility, gauging the grain, feeling if the wood will accept tension without cracking. After a moment, he nods to himself, satisfied, and sets it aside near the fire to warm gently. He gestures to the child, then to you, then points to the bow stave. The meaning becomes clear. Winter was also a time for teaching different skills for different ages. The child will learn bow making someday. You are learning now, in your own way. The woman's voice rises softly as she speaks, telling a story, though you only catch fragments of meaning. Her gestures help. The shape of a bird, the curl of smoke, the arc of a hunter's bow. The child watches her with wide eyes. You watch her too, letting her cadence wrap around the room like warm cloth. Historians still debate which stories were told in which seasons. Whether winter stories were sacred or simply passed down during long months indoors. But watching her, you understand that these stories do more than entertain. They bind everything together: the fire, the family, the season. The man begins tracing shapes in the dirt with a small stick. At first you think he's drawing something abstract, but then you notice the patterns: curved lines, small arrows, a circle divided into segments. A map not of land, but of wind patterns. He points toward the walls, then toward the flaps above. The tipi responds to the wind, but the wind also responds to the land. Knowing the plains' winter winds meant knowing how to build, live, and travel safely. You find yourself leaning closer, studying the shapes. He draws the direction of prevailing winter winds, showing how they curve around ridges and how storms move like sweeping arcs across the open plains. He points to the spot where your tipi stands now, slightly sheltered by a low rise in the landscape. You realize this campsite was chosen with enormous care. You feel the storm gust outside, brushing the walls with a low vibration. His drawing suddenly feels alive. Then he adds something else, small dots near the circle. Campsites. Winter camps weren't random. They followed cycles based on resources, protection, and tradition. You sense layers of memory beneath his drawing, places his ancestors visited, winds they endured, lessons the land taught them. You suddenly feel humbled by the depth of knowledge beneath your feet. The woman shifts her seat, pulls a new length of sinew from a pouch, and twists it tightly between her fingers. You notice how strong and flexible it is. She hands you a piece, inviting you to try. You tug gently, it holds firm. She raises an eyebrow as if to say, "So you believe us now about the importance of good materials?" You nod vigorously. She smiles. The child begins humming again, tapping his tiny fingers on the ground in a steady rhythm. The woman joins him, adding a soft harmony. The man adds a low, barely audible note as he shapes the bow stave. The entire tipi becomes a quiet winter orchestra, each sound blending with the storm outside. A small crack from the fire interrupts the rhythm. A log shifts, sending a cascade of red sparks toward the smoke hole. The man moves instantly, nudging the log back into place with a long stick. His reaction is calm, instinctive. Fire management in winter isn't dramatic, it's constant attentiveness. He gestures for you to come closer again. You crawl toward the fire, careful not to disturb the child, who scoots behind you like a sleepy duckling. The man points to the coals, deep, glowing, steady. Then he points to the logs angled to allow air to flow between them. Then he taps his ear. Listening. You listen. You hear a faint pop beneath the surface of the coals. He nods. That means the wood is slightly damp. But only slightly. It's burning well enough. You marvel at how much he knows from a single sound. Then he gestures toward the walls. You crawl over and place your hand on the inner lining. Warm, smooth, no drafts. Then he shows you the bottom edge of the outer hide, tightly sealed with snow. The snow has frozen into a firm ridge, creating a perfect windbreak. Winter has become part of the insulation. An obscure cultural detail emerges gently. In some camps, families deliberately packed snow around the base of their tipis to create stronger insulation and wind resistance. The snow became part of the structure, never an enemy, always a resource. You lean back into your seat, letting everything you've learned settle into place. The child crawls into your lap again, curls into a small ball, and pulls your cloak over his head. You adjust it slightly, so he doesn't accidentally transform himself into a very warm burrito with no air holes. He peeks one eye out, satisfied, and falls back asleep instantly. You stroke the back of his small head, surprised by how natural it feels. The woman gives you a long, soft look, the kind that carries both gratitude and amusement. You've become part of the teepee's warmth. The fire dims slightly, so the man rises, adds a new log, and rearranges the embers. The flames grow taller again, filling the space with radiant light. The tipi breathes, the storm whispers, the family works, the warmth deepens, and you, wrapped in furs and quiet understanding, sink deeper into the winter world, learning not just how they heated their tipis, but how they lived within them, fully and wisely. The storm outside shifts again, less fierce now, more like a steady, icy lullaby brushing against the hide walls. The tipi sways slightly in response, a gentle pulse rather than a shudder. Inside, the warmth thickens, settling deep into the floor coverings and rising up through the curled smoke like a living presence. The air feels rich, soft, and faintly sweet from the herbs simmering in the pot. The child sleeps heavily. Against your side, a small but determined source of warmth. His blanket is bunched halfway around him, so you gently tug it back up to his shoulders. He responds by burrowing deeper into your ribs, apparently satisfied with your level of service. The woman watches with the fond, slightly smug expression of someone who knew all along that the child would adopt you. She resumes her work, lifting a small pouch filled with brightly dyed quills. Yellow, red, black, and white. The colors glow in the firelight. She chooses one quill and begins softening it with her fingers, rolling it gently until it becomes pliable enough to weave into the hide she's decorating. You watch as she bends the quill, fits it into a tiny slit she cut earlier, and pulls it through with the awl. The pattern grows slowly, geometric shapes repeating with perfect rhythm. The technique is so delicate that you find yourself holding your breath with each careful stitch. A historical detail settles warmly into your thoughts. Quill work was often a winter activity, when long hours indoors allowed for detailed, intricate artistry. In some families, it was considered a sign of discipline and patience skills, as essential as hunting or fire building. The man shifts closer to the fire, checking the heat with the back of his hand. He picks up the bow stave he shaped earlier and turns it slowly, inspecting it from every angle. Then he places it on a small stake near the fire to warm gradually, ensuring the wood becomes more flexible for final shaping. Too fast and it will crack, too slow and it won't bend properly. Winter wasn't just about managing cold, it was about managing time. He gestures to you, then taps the bow stave, then the fire. You understand. Heating the wood must be done carefully, just like managing the fire itself. Everything in winter is a slow process, and rushing anything, whether hide, work, or bow shaping, or simply sealing the doorway, invites trouble. The woman speaks, softly, gesturing toward the child, then the quills, then the story she told earlier. You catch only fragments of meaning, but the warmth of her voice carries all you need. You sense she's sharing how winter work, stories, and tools, all these small tasks fit together to create a life that doesn't just survive the cold, but thrives within it. The teepee hums faintly as the wind brushes it again. The snow around the base now forms a sturdy ridge, insulating every inch of the lower wall. You can hear the subtle difference when the wind hits the lower half is muted, solid. The upper half vibrates lightly, like a drum touched by soft hands. You reach out and place your palm against the inner lining. Warm, soft, completely stable. The lining creates a quiet world inside the larger world, a membrane that shields without suffocating, insulates without isolating. It's brilliant design. Simple, ancient, effective. The man taps the ground lightly with a stick, getting your attention. He draws another diagram in the dirt. This time it's the inside of the teepee walls, lining, fire pit, sleeping areas, storage, doorway. He draws arrows, showing how air flows through the space. He points to the base. Cold air enters behind the lining, travels downward, then feeds the fire. Warm air rises along the lining, fills the living space, and escapes upward through the smoke hole. It's not merely shelter. It's airflow choreography. Historians still debate which tribes perfected what variations, how lining materials changed, how flap angles differed, whether some groups used heavier winter covers or double pole systems. But there is no debate that tipis were among the most thermodynamically clever dwellings ever constructed. You nod, impressed. He taps the diagram again, then taps your forehead with the stick, lightly. You've learned something important. You smile. He pretends not to, but the corner of his mouth twitches. The woman stands and moves to the pot near the rough. Fire. She checks the contents, stirs slowly, then ladles some into a carved wooden bowl. The smell rises earthy, rich, herbal. She offers you a bowl with a nod. You blow on the surface and sip. It's warm and comforting. Slightly tart, but sweet at the finish. You instantly feel heat unfurl down your throat. Another lesser-known winter detail. Soups and stews were a central part of winter eating. Not because they were cozy, though obviously they were, but because warm liquid helped maintain body temperature while conserving fuel and ingredients. Liquids warmed the body more efficiently than dry foods. The child wakes briefly, rubbing his eyes with both fists. He sits up, stares at your bowl, then reaches for it without hesitation. You offer him a small sip. He nods in sleepy approval, then curls back into you. Outside, the wind swells suddenly, pushing the tipi walls inward in a slow, heavy bow. The poles groan softly in ancient sound, not fear but resistance. The flaps above rustle sharply. A brief swirl of snow filters through the smoke hole, melting instantly as it hits warm air. The man rises. He grabs the long pole and adjusts the smoke flaps in a swift, practiced motion. The opening narrows just slightly, protecting the interior from the storm's upward drafts. As he works, the woman reinforces the hide at the doorway, tugging it tighter and securing the bottom edge with another stone. You watch their routine, quick, efficient, synchronized. Winter demands readiness, not panic. Everything here happens before a problem becomes a problem. The storm eases again after a moment, settling back to its steady whisper. The tipi relaxes, poles loosening their tension like muscles exhaling. The man returns to his seat and checks the bow stave once more. It bends slightly under his hands. He nods. Soon it will be ready for stringing. The woman resumes her quill work, adding another vibrant line to the pattern. You marvel at how color lives in winter here, not as decoration, but as warmth for the spirit. The reds and yellows glow like captured sunlight. Then she does something unexpected. She hands you a small quill and nods toward the hide pattern. A test. You take a breath and try to imitate her technique, softening the quill, bending it, feeding it through the hide. Your first attempt is crooked. Your second is wobbly. Your third earns a smile. Progress. The child, now awake, scoots closer and holds up a stick, showing you a lopsided shape he drew. Another tipi drawing. You match his energy and draw one too. He inspects it, nods approvingly, then adds a bunch of random dots around it. Snow, apparently. The woman laughs softly. The man raises an eyebrow in quiet amusement. The tipi feels warmer. You lean back, listening to the layers of winter. The crackle of fire, the rustle of hide, the whisper of wind, the soft tapping of quillwork, the child's sleepy hum. Everything blends into a lullaby. Inside this warm, intelligent structure, winter doesn't feel hostile. It feels vast, ancient, and something to be respected, but also something that people have lived with, not against, for countless generations. You exhale slowly. The fire glows, the tipi breathes, and the journey deepens. The storm outside drifts into a deep, steady quiet, the kind that makes the entire world feel muffled and cocooned. Snow moves across the plains in long, whispering swirls, but inside the tipi, the fire glows low and warm, casting amber halos across the hides and floor coverings. The air is thick with calm. Even the crackle of the fire seems softer, more deliberate, as if it knows winter is listening. The child stirs against your side, stretches like a small cat, and blinks up at you with hazy confusion. Clearly unsure how long he's been asleep on you, but generally content with the arrangement. He crawls down into your lap and sits there, swaying slightly in that "I'm awake but my soul is still loading" way toddlers have. Wrap part of the fur blanket around him, and he leans into it, sighing deeply. The woman finishes a row of quill work and ties off the last strand of sinew with a quick, confident motion. Then she sets the hide aside and rises, stretching her shoulders. She gestures toward the back of the teepee and leads you there, motioning for you to follow quietly so as not to disturb the man. He is still working on the bow stave, and his concentration is intense, jaw set, eyes narrowed, hands steady. At the back wall, she lifts a corner of the winter lining, revealing something tucked between the lining and the outer hide. A series of thin, vertical sticks woven together like a primitive screen. She taps them lightly, then gestures toward the cold air slipping behind the lining. A historical detail falls into place. Some winter tipis used extra structural elements, woven willow mats or bark screens, to guide airflow and reinforce the insulation. These thin barriers help trap warm air inside, while channeling cold air into predictable paths behind the lining. Not every family used them, but those who did enjoyed even more controlled winter comfort. You reach out and touch the woven screen. It feels smooth and slightly cool. The woman smiles at your curiosity, then lifts another section of the lining to show a second mat placed lower, near the ground. The airflow here is colder, more concentrated. She waves her hand along it, demonstrating the downward pull of cold air that eventually feeds the fire. You can feel the airflow now, warm, rising, cold, sinking, everything in conversation with everything else. Inside a tipi, physics isn't theoretical. It's daily life. The woman lowers the lining again, sealing the warm air inside. She taps the hide gently, nodding as if checking its tension. Every movement she makes seems purposeful, intuitive, like someone conversing with the structure itself. The child, now fully awake, toddles over with a warmed stone wrapped in cloth and presses it into your hands. He expects praise. You deliver praise. He beams, holds the stone to his own cheek, then places it beside your leg with ceremonious seriousness. The man finishes shaping the bow stave and begins smoothing it with sandstone. Long strokes, even pressure. He works like the firework, steady, patient, relentless in its subtlety. When he finishes, he holds the stave up to the firelight, checking for symmetry. He bends it gently against his knee. It flexes well. He looks satisfied. The child claps, though. It's unclear whether he understands what just happened or simply enjoys clapping. The man responds with a small grin. Next, the man takes a small bundle of sinew and begins twisting and stretching it. He wets it with warm water, pulling it into a long, thin cord. The sinew gleams in the firelight. You realize he's preparing the bowstring. You can see the strands tighten and unify as he works, becoming something strong enough to hold tension through cold and wind. A scholarly uncertainty drifts into your thoughts. Some accounts suggest bowstrings in winter were occasionally reinforced with plant fibers or wrapped to prevent freezing. Others argue that pure sinew, when properly dried and oiled, performed better in sub-zero temperatures. Standing here, watching him prepare the string with such care, you can see why historians debate it. These details mattered. The woman moves to the fire and tosses a handful of dried sage onto the embers. A soft wave of scent rolls through the tipi clean, bright, calming. The child inhales deeply and leans back like someone smelling something sacred. You do the same. It feels like the air itself becomes lighter. The man ties one end of the bowstring to the stave, carefully bending the wood as he attaches the other end. When it's complete, he holds the bow up for you to see. Elegant, simple, deadly in its purpose, but also warm. Not physically warm, but warm in the way something handmade is. Warm an object shaped by thought, intention, and tradition. He places the bow gently in a safe spot behind him. The child crawls over, touches it reverently, then scurries back to your lap as if that brief contact filled some internal requirement. The man doesn't scold him, just watches with the tolerant patience of someone who understands curiosity as a natural part of growing up. The woman sits again, pulling a larger hide across her lap. She sprinkles water lightly across it, then begins stretching it with both hands. The hide responds slowly, adjusting, loosening, becoming more supple. Winter hide work wasn't just scraping and sewing, it was a full-body process, relying on strength, rhythm, and a deep sensitivity to materials. You try stretching a small corner. The hide resists you. She laughs, not unkindly, and helps you reposition your hands. With her guidance, the hide bends. Not easily, but believably. You exhale, proud of yourself. She smirks, proud of you too. Outside, the wind shifts direction, brushing the tipi from a new angle. The smoke line trembles slightly. The man looks up immediately, stands, and adjusts the smoke flaps with two swift motions, one outward, one angled. The smoke rises cleanly again. He sits, calm. The woman nods approvingly. You marvel at how fast they noticed and fixed the problem. Even the child watches, absorbing the lesson with wide eyes. Inside a winter tipi, noticing small things isn't optional. It's survival. The man gestures toward the entrance, motioning for you to join him. You slip out with him and immediately feel the cold gnaw at your face, a sharp reminder of the world outside. The landscape is blanketed in snow, glowing faintly blue in the storm's thick veil. The wind is calmer now, but still carries a bite. He kneels and brushes snow from the lower edge of the exterior cover, reshaping the insulation ridge. You see how the snow has settled, melting slightly from the tipi's warmth, then refreezing into a firm seal. It's beautiful in its own way, a confluence of design and environment. He taps it once. Solid. He gestures for you to tap it too. You do. It's sturdy, like a frozen wall that grew naturally around the tipi. He looks at you, nods, and gestures upward. Snow has accumulated along the poles. He gives the poles a firm shake, just enough to slide the weight downward, but not enough to disturb the structure. Snow falls away in soft cascades. Another obscure winter detail unfolds in your mind. Snow management wasn't just about warmth, it was about weight. Too much snow meant strain on the poles. Families cleared it regularly, especially during long storms. You both re-enter the tipi. The warmth hits you instantly, soothing the cold from your skin. The woman is humming again. The child has curled into your spot, claiming it temporarily. When he sees you return, he lifts his arms toward you in sleepy expectation. You sit, and he crawls onto you, without a hesitation. The woman shakes her head, smiling. The fire crackles. The walls glow softly. The airflow moves in perfect harmony. Inside the tipi, winter no longer feels vast or threatening. It feels like part of a world shaped by brilliant design, careful attention, and the steady rhythm of human hands. And your journey deepens further into the wisdom of winter life. The storm outside has mellowed into a long, sighing exhale, an endless drift of snowflakes swirling sideways across the plains. The tipi responds with gentle movements. A bow here, a soft stretch there, like a creature adjusting itself to stay comfortable. Inside, the warmth feels almost thick. The fires glow, deepening into a rich amber that pools across the hides and floor mats. The child has fallen asleep again, this time curled like a tiny fox on your lap, one hand gripping your clothing in a relaxed but possessive way. Your legs have accepted their fate. They no longer protest. They simply exist to be warm, furniture. The woman finishes stretching her hide and sets it aside with a satisfied nod. Then she reaches into a parfleche container, decorated with bold, triangular designs, removing a small bundle wrapped in soft buckskin. She unfolds it and reveals something unexpected. A series of flat, oval stones, each one polished to an almost glassy surface. She gestures for you to follow her closer to the fire. She places one stone directly at the edge of the coals, not quite touching them, then waits. You watch closely, curious. After a moment, she lifts it with tongs and places it on a fur pad. Then she drags a hide glove over its surface. Steam rises, not smoke, but clean, white vapor. The stone is hot enough to evaporate moisture instantly. She offers it to you. You place your hands near it. The heat radiates outward, steady, smooth, incredibly strong. This isn't like a normal warmed stone. This is different. She picks up one of the other stones and scratches its surface lightly with a bone tool. Small flakes come off, glinting in the firelight. You realize these aren't just warmed rocks, they're soapstones or a similar heat-retaining mineral. A historical detail clicks. Certain tribes use special stones in winter that could hold heat far longer than ordinary river stones. Soapstone absorbs heat slowly, but releases it over many hours. A slow, silent heater. She places one stone beneath the family's sleeping area, then another near the cooking pot. Your respect for winter ingenuity grows exponentially. These stones essentially turn tipis into radiant heat homes, long before anyone invented the term. You tuck this into your mental folder titled, "Modern Heating Systems Wish They Were This Clever." The man sets aside the finished bow and begins shaping arrow shafts. He uses a straightening tool, two grooved pieces of bone that he clamps briefly over each shaft, bending and eyeing it from different angles. The firelight reflects on his face as he works, showing the deep focus behind every motion. He gestures for you to come closer. He places an unfinished arrow shaft in your hands. It's surprisingly light, almost weightless. You run your thumb along its surface. Smooth, straight, perfect. He shows you how to shave one edge with a small flint blade, teaching you the angle. Not too shallow, not too sharp. Arrow making is precision work, especially in winter. Broken arrows are useless when hunting is difficult. Winter arrows needed to be dependable. He guides your hand. Your first attempt splinters the wood slightly. He smiles sympathetically and hands you another. Your second attempt is better, not good, but better. He nods. Progress. The child wakes again just in time to declare your arrow shaving effort acceptable with a tiny grunt of approval. The woman laughs so softly it becomes part of the fire's crackling. She retrieves a new item, now thin strips of tanned hide that she rolls into narrow cords. She twists them with practice fingers, creating something like leather twine. Then she shows you a small pouch containing gluey resin. She opens it and dips a finger inside, smearing a bit along one of the cords. She wraps the cord around the arrow shaft's end, securing a small notch. You realize this is fletching preparation, the base where feathers will attach. An obscure winter tidbit floats in. Feathers used for arrows were often collected during warmer seasons, dried carefully, and stored for winter crafting. The cold air made glue set faster and allowed for precise binding. She hands the finished base to the man, who inspects it, nods, and hands it to the child, who waves it like it's a magic wand. A very dangerous magic wand. The woman swiftly reclaims it before he can test its magical properties on your hair. The child pouts. Only for 2 seconds. The man begins preparing the fletching feathers, turkey feathers, from the look of them. He splits them, trims them, and shapes them carefully. Each feather bends naturally toward a curve. He explains with gestures that the direction of the curve can influence arrow spin. Winter work wasn't just maintenance, it was fine-tuning skill. He hands you a feather. It feels light, fragile, almost impossibly delicate. He shows you how to line it up on the shaft, binding it with sinew and resin. Your hands shake slightly, not from cold, but from the weight of wanting to do well. He steadies your fingers, guiding your pressure. After a moment, your feather sits in place, not as clean as his, but not terrible either. The man points at your work, then touches his own chest, then touches your chest. You interpret this as, you did it. You're learning. You beam. The child beams because you beam. The woman beams because both of you beam. The tipi glows with warmth and laughter. Then the wind shifts again. A gust presses against the tipi from the south, a direction it hasn't come from all morning. The smoke column wavers. A faint draft slips along the floor. The entire family stills for a moment, listening. The man stands and quickly adjusts the south-facing smoke flap, adding a second weight to the edge. The woman checks the lining at the back. The child crawls near the entrance, touching the hide to feel how the wind is moving. You follow him and place your hand against the hide. It vibrates softly like a drum touched by fingertips. The cold tries to enter, but the snow seal holds firm. Historians still debate how often families adjusted smoke flaps per day during winter storms. Some accounts say dozens of times. Others claim practice families could anticipate shifts before they happened. Standing here now, you see the truth. It's constant awareness, constant relationship with the elements. The storm hums. The tipi answers. The family listens. The wind shifts again, back west this time, and the smoke column steadies. The man returns to his seat, satisfied. The woman continues her hide twisting. The child crawls into your lap again and falls instantly asleep. The fire glows deeper now, its coals shining like sleepy stars. The heated soapstone at your side radiates a comforting heat. The hides beneath you feel soft and insulating. The air is perfectly balanced between warm and breathable. You close your eyes briefly, Not to sleep, just to feel. Inside this space, winter feels ancient, vast, and strangely gentle. Not because it is gentle, but because the people here have learned to meet it with wisdom that runs deeper than the cold. And your journey continues, warming with every breath. By now, the tipi feels less like a shelter you're visiting, and more like a small universe you've temporarily become part of, a warm, breathing world wrapped in hide and held up by knowledge older than anything you've ever studied. The storm outside keeps its steady whisper, sometimes rising, sometimes falling, but always circling the tipi like a restless spirit, kept politely at a distance. The child sleeps heavily against your chest, his cheek pressed into your clothing, breath warm and slow. You adjust the fur blanket so it covers him fully. He wiggles once, then melts back into stillness, his complete trust in the warmth around him, trust in the family, the fire, the structure, and, apparently, you feels like a gift. The woman, now finished with hide stretching and quill work for the moment, moves toward the storage area and takes down a large, beautifully decorated parfleche. She lays it flat on a hide and opens it with care. Inside are neatly organized bundles wrapped in cloth, roots, dried berries, strips of jerked meat, herbs, and something that looks like powdered fat. She arranges them in tidy stacks and gestures for you to come closer. When you kneel beside her, she points at the fat powder, then at your cup from earlier. She pinches a bit of the powder between her fingers and mimics, dropping it into liquid. You understand immediately. This is pemmican, the winter survival food of survival foods. Dried berries, fat, and meat, pounded together into a high-energy meal that lasts for months and nourishes with an efficiency that would make modern nutritionists weep. A major historical fact unfolds. Pemmican wasn't just food. It was an invention of genius-level winter strategy. Lightweight, shelf-stable, nutrient-dense, and easily stored in tipis. It powered long hunts, migrations, and cold seasons. She offers you a small piece. You try it. It is dense. It is rich. It tastes like history condensed into a single bite. You nod your thanks. She nods, back with the proud satisfaction of someone offering culture in edible form. The man finishes attaching the fletching to another arrow and sets it aside gently. Then he takes up a new task, straightening a spear shaft. He heats the wood briefly near the fire, then bends it with deliberate pressure, measuring straightness, not with tools, but with the alignment of his eyes and the angle of his thumb. You marvel at the precision, no ruler, no workshop, no clamps, just skill, patience, and winter air. He notices your awe and gestures for you to try. You take the warm shaft, feeling its slight curve. He guides your hands to the right pressure points, then nods. You push gently. The wood resists at first, then gives, then straightens. He taps your shoulder once with a faint smile, high praise from a man of few words. As you work, the child stirs, opens one eye halfway, and places a small hand on the shaft you're straightening. You freeze. He pushes it lightly, pretending he helped. You thank him with dramatic enthusiasm. He accepts this recognition without hesitation. Outside, a crack from shifting ice echoes across the plains, deep, hollow, resonant. The tipi shivers slightly. The woman looks toward the sound, listens for a moment, then relaxes. Just the river, adjusting to winter. Nothing to fear. Inside, the fire's rhythm shifts. The coals settle into a dense bed of glowing heat, and the flames lower into a steady, controlled burn. The air becomes even richer with warmth, cushioned by the insulated lining and the heat-soaked stones on the floor. The woman picks up a new bundle, a stack of dried cattail fluff wrapped in hide. She opens it, and the fluff expands, soft and bright in the light. She gestures for you to touch it. You do, startled by how warm it feels. She shows you something clever. She fills small hide pouches with cattail fluff and places them near sleeping areas. These are winter pillows, light, insulating, moisture-resistant, a small comfort, but a meaningful one. An obscure winter tidbit unfolds. Cattail fluff was one of the most versatile insulating materials in native life, used in bedding, children's cradle boards, winter footwear, and even as fire starters. The child immediately claims one of the pouches for himself, hugging it with sleepy triumph. The man shifts his focus now, taking a fire-hardened stick and smoothing its end to a rounded point. You recognize the shape. A digging stick used for unearthing roots even in frosty ground. Winter still offered resources if you knew where to look. He sharpens it with quiet purpose, then sets it beside other tools. The woman signals for your attention again. She lifts the edge of the smoke hole lining, revealing something unexpected. A pair of small strings tied high inside the tipi. She tugs gently, and you see how they subtly alter the tension between poles, tightening one part of the cover, loosening another. A structural adjustment system. You stare. This is new. She gestures broadly. The tipi isn't static. It can be tuned like an instrument. Historians still debate how widespread these upper tie adjustments were, or whether they varied by tribe or region. Some say they were essential for winter wind resistance. Others say they were used mainly for summer ventilation. Standing here, you see they can do both. She lets the tie fall again, the lining relaxing into place. The tipi shifts barely, not even visibly, but the airflow around your face changes. Warmer, softer. This tiny adjustment made a difference. You suddenly find yourself appreciating how every part of this home has nuance and intelligence woven into it. The child yawns loudly, stretches his arms, and toddles over to sit in the woman's lap. She kisses the top of his head quickly, almost absently, while continuing her work. The gesture is simple, but so full of warmth that it makes your chest tighten slightly. The man sharpens a bone tool against a stone, then hands it to the woman. She tests it by slicing a strip of hide. It glides through like paper. She nods and begins cutting lengths of hide for winter moccasin soles. She hands you a small piece. Then she hands you the bone tool. A challenge. Your cut wobbles. She smiles. You try again. Better. The child watches and nods like a tiny foreman overseeing construction. Outside, the storm shifts direction again, but now you hear the feather-light tail of it. Not a threat. Not a push. Just movement. The man adjusts the smoke flaps with barely any effort. The fire responds immediately. The air shifts. The warmth remains steady. Inside the tipi, everything feels synchronized. The people, the fire, the lining, the stones, even the storm. You exhale, sinking deeper into the hides. The child leans against you again, his head finding its usual spot. The woman beams. The man nods. The fire glows. And you visitor, witness, student, feel yourself soften into the rhythm of winter living. The tipi breathes. The world outside hums. And your journey continues deeper into the heart of winter wisdom. The storm outside has shifted from a restless wanderer to a companionable presence, always there, always whispering, but no longer testing the tipi's resolve. Snowdrifts settle around the structure like soft white walls, and the wind brushes the hide with the quiet pressure of a hand smoothing fabric. Inside, the warmth gathers thickly in the air, layered from floor to smoke hole in a perfect gradient of comfort. The child curls into your lap one more time, blinking sleepily as he tries to decide whether to fully wake up. He pokes your arm. You poke him back. He squints at you in mock offense, then collapses against your chest in dramatic forgiveness. You've been in this tipi long enough that you can predict his personality arcs now. The woman moves to the fire pit and adds a handful of dried herbs to a small clay bowl. She crushes them gently with a wooden pestle. The scent rises, instantly sharp, bright, almost mint-like. She gestures for you to lean closer and scoop a little of the powder into your hands. When you inhale, your lungs feel clearer, your breath smoother. Winter lungs, she explains with a gesture. Dry air, cold air, smoke, you need something to balance it. This herb blend does just that. An obscure cultural detail flares in your thoughts. Some Plains families used inhaled herb powders to ease breathing, warm the chest, or help children sleep during long storms. The mixtures varied, their recipes often learned from elders and passed down quietly through generations. The man, meanwhile, begins adjusting something new, something you've seen but haven't paid much attention to. He picks up several small hides and lays them on the floor, forming a semicircle around the fire pit. You realize they're not random storage coverings. They're draft baffles, soft barriers placed to subtly guide airflow across the floor. When he places the last one, He taps the ground with a stick, then draws arrows in the dirt to show how cold air moves. You follow his lines with your eyes. Cold air sinks from the entrance, hugs the earth, meets the soft hides, and slows, diffusing before it can climb upward. The fire then pulls it inward and upward, heating it. The hides act like speed bumps for cold air. You did not expect winter insulation to include aerodynamic floor engineering, yet here you are. The woman returns to her seat and begins sorting feathers for winter clothing, small, fluffy down feathers that look impossibly soft. She adds them to a larger pouch, pressing them down gently. Then she picks up a child's winter hood, lined with fur and thick cloth, and begins stuffing the down between the layers. You watch her hands move. Quick, sure, thoughtful. A major historical fact settles in. Winter clothing wasn't just thick, it was layered with materials that trapped air. Warmth doesn't come from the material alone. It comes from the air it holds. Down feathers were ideal for this. Light, insulating, reliable. She hands you a feather, then gestures at the hood. You add it. Badly, but you add it. She repacks it with 2 fingers and nods. Acceptable for a beginner. The child toddles over and steals a handful of feathers. You give chase. He giggles. Feathers explode into the air like tiny white sparks. The man watches, torn between amusement and mild despair. The woman sighs the sigh of someone who has accepted that children and feathers will never peacefully coexist. After recovering the majority of the feathers, the woman ties them back into the pouch and gives the child a stern look. He attempts a fake apology by nuzzling her hand. She softens instantly. Toddlers are powerful. The man gestures for you to join him again, this time near the door. He lifts the flap slightly, letting in a sliver of cold air. The chill is immediate, but then he lowers the flap only halfway, not closed, not open. Cold air enters in a thin line, hugging the floor before it reaches the draft baffles. None of it rises. You watch the convection currents form visibly in the firelight. Tiny movements in smoke, subtle ripples near the floor. He's showing you how precise winter ventilation can be. Historians still debate how much winter ventilation was standardized or adjusted by feel, but today it's obvious. Skill and intuition guided every movement. The man reads the air like someone else might read a river or a book, checking its temperature, direction, and energy. Then he closes the flap fully again and secures it with a small bone toggle. The warmth rebounds instantly, settling into your skin, curling into your joints. The woman begins preparing something new. A small hide bag filled with tiny wooden sticks, each one about the size of a toothpick. She dumps them out gently. You see they're scented: cedar, sweetgrass, juniper, sage, winter fragrances. She selects a few and places them near the fire, not in it, just near enough that the heat releases their scents slowly. The child leans in close and inhales deeply. He wiggles with happiness. An obscure tidbit. Scented wood pieces were sometimes kept in winter tipis to help freshen the air during long storms. Practical, gentle, mood-lifting. Long before scented candles were a thing. The man now brings out a new item, a small hide bundle tied with sinew. When he unwraps it, you see thin, carved wooden slats, each about a hand's length. He hands one to you. You run your fingers along it. It's polished, smooth, with holes carved along one side. A flute. He gestures for you to try. You hesitate. He insists. You put it to your lips and blow. The sound that emerges is a dying goose. A goose begging for mercy. A goose filing a complaint. The child bursts into loud laughter, nearly falling backward. The man chuckles. The woman tries not to chuckle. You cough, attempt dignity, and hand the flute back. He plays it. Soft. Low. A sound like wind through tall grass, like a lullaby whispered by winter. You decide he may have been born knowing how to play it. As he finishes, the storm outside shifts. The sound of snow against the hide becomes almost rhythmic. The tipi hums with the wind, not in fear, but in resonance. The child crawls into your lap again and rests his head on your shoulder. You wrap your arm around him. He relaxes instantly. You realize you've become part of the warmth-keeping system, another human heater in a well-designed home. The woman sits beside you and begins telling another winter story. This one is soft, melodic, full of rising and falling sounds. Though you cannot understand every word, you feel the story in the tone. Animals surviving winter, fire as friend, snow as teacher, wind as trickster. The man listens while checking the bowstring tension, nodding occasionally at familiar parts of the tale. The story, the fire, the storm, they blend together, weaving a kind of winter tapestry around you. Warmth, rhythm, presence. Inside this tipi, winter is not danger, it is relationship. You feel yourself sinking deeper into that understanding, safe, warm, and welcomed. And the journey continues, carrying you further into the quiet intelligence of winter living. The storm outside quiets even further, turning into a long, slow hiss like distant waves washing against a shore made of snow instead of sand. The wind no longer pushes at the tipi. It brushes it, soft and steady, as if tracing familiar contours. The structure responds with gentle breaths, expanding and settling like a great sleeping animal. Inside, the world feels timeless. The fire glows with the deep red of embers that have burned for hours without complaint. The air is a tapestry of warmth, woven from countless threads. The heated stones tucked under hides, the layered lining, the snow-packed base, the steady draft control, the flicker of the flame, and the presence of the family around you. The child sleeps again, this time sprawled across your lap with complete and utter trust. His tiny fingers are curled around the fabric of your clothing, and his cheek is warm against your stomach. He looks peaceful, content, and unaware that he's been using you as a mattress for the better part of a day. The woman finishes her winter garment stitching and places the nearly complete coat beside her. The fur lining looks thick, soft, and extraordinarily warm. She taps the shoulder seam and gestures to you, explaining that winter coats weren't just heavy, they were designed to allow airflow when needed, with adjustable closures, ties, and foldable hoods. Too warm can be as dangerous as too cold. A historical fact settles into your awareness. Many native winter garments were brilliant systems of layered mobility, breathable, adaptable, wind-resistant, and made to keep the body warm without trapping moisture. Sweat in the winter is as dangerous as frostbite. The woman picks up the coat, again, feels the fur, and nods to herself with quiet satisfaction. The man, meanwhile, is preparing something new. He takes a long, narrow pouch from behind a bundle of belongings. When he opens it, you see rows of small carved pieces, some wood, some bone, some antler. Tools, lots of them. He selects 2 flat bone pieces with holes through their centers and hands one to you. He places a wooden spindle through the hole, then another stick beside it, rolling them between his palms to show how they can be used to drill holes, shape materials, or create small notches. A winter multi-tool, simple, elegant, effective. You try it. The spindle spins unevenly. He fixes your grip. It spins better. You feel faintly proud. The child wakes for half a second, pats your knee, then falls back asleep. That counts as applause. The woman begins gathering items around the fire, a bowl, a hide mat, a bundle of dried meat. She arranges them neatly. Then she opens a small pouch filled with bright red powder. She sprinkles a pinch into a wooden bowl of hot water and hands it to you. You sniff it. It smells fruity, earthy, inviting. You sip it. It floods your mouth with warmth and a subtle tartness. Berry tea. An obscure winter detail settles. Dried berry powders, mixed with hot water, provided vitamins and energy during long storms, helping prevent deficiencies when fresh food was scarce. The woman gestures toward the tea, then toward the child. You understand. It's good for everyone. Adults, elders, children. Winter nutrition is teamwork. The man finishes sharpening a tool, then reaches for another hide. But this hide is different, thicker, pre-smoked, with darker coloration. He lifts it and shows you where holes are punched along its top edge. You recognize the shape, a winter door flap. He brings it to the entrance and places it carefully over the existing flap. The thickness doubles. The wind immediately quiets. Just like layering clothing, tipis were layered for storms. He secures it with toggles, then taps the bottom to ensure no drafts sneak underneath. The cold stays out instantly. Inside, the air feels warmer, noticeably warmer. You lift the child gently, shifting his weight so he doesn't drool on you too late. His tiny face presses into your chest again. You accept your fate. The woman smiles knowingly. She seems to appreciate that the child, in his small but determined way, trusts you. Trust is warmth too. She motions to the back wall and shows you something you hadn't noticed before. A storage sling made of hide strips woven together, suspended between two poles. Inside are tools, small bundles, and neatly folded hides. She taps the sling and then points upward. Storage, air circulation, fewer pests, cleaner space. A historian's uncertainty floats up. Not every source agrees on whether winter storage slings were universal or varied by region. But standing here now, you see their practical value clearly. The man adds another piece of wood to the fire, a thicker one for long, slow burn. He positions it carefully, leaving a narrow vent beneath it. The fire responds immediately, crackling as air moves upward through the channel. You notice something else. The man occasionally tilts his head slightly and listens to the fire the way one might listen for tone in music. Is the flame too low? Too smoky? Too fast burning? He adjusts a log, and the pitch of the burning changes subtly. Fire is not just heat. Fire is language. He looks toward you and gestures for you to listen too. You lean in. You hear a soft, high crackle, dry wood burning cleanly, a low, slow hiss, moisture evaporating, a faint pop deep in the coals, a signal the wood needs repositioning. The man nods approvingly. You're starting to hear it. The woman now pulls a long hide strip from a pouch and lays it across her lap. She wraps dried grass inside it, then rolls it tightly, tying it with sinew. You assume it's some kind of winter rope, but she lifts it to her face and sniffs it. Ah, a scent bundle. For sleep. When warmed near the fire, it will release its fragrance slowly throughout the night, a calming, soothing aroma for the whole family. She hands it to you. You smell it. It is warm, earthy, gentle, comfort distilled into a small object. The child stirs and sniffs too. He approves wholeheartedly, judging by the satisfied grunt he makes before collapsing sideways on you again. Outside, the storm grows just a little stronger enough to send a soft rumble across the plains. The tipi sways gently. The lining holds. The snow-packed base insulates. The heated stones glow. The fire stays steady. The whole structure feels alive, intelligent, and in conversation with the world. The man sits beside the fire again and gestures for the woman to join him. She settles next to him, her quillwork and hides arranged at her side. Together they begin their evening tasks, slow, repetitive, peaceful. The child breathes softly against you. The tipi glows. The wind hums. The fire pulses. You feel your own breath deepen into the rhythm around you. Winter no longer feels like a threat. It feels like an enormous, whispering presence that this family has learned not to fear, but to dance with. Inside this tipi, you are warm. Inside this tipi, you are part of the rhythm. Inside this tipi, you continue learning how winter becomes a partner instead of an enemy. By now, the tipi feels like a second skin around you, alive, warm, gently shifting with every breath of the storm outside. The world beyond the hide walls is a vast, frozen plain humming under layers of snow. But in here, the air glows with comfort. The fire burns low and steady, its embers pulsing like a soft red heart at the center of everything. The child has melted completely into your lap again, little limbs draped wherever gravity decides. His slow breaths rise and fall against your belly, perfectly synced with the rhythm of the fire. At this point, you're convinced he might think you're part of the sleeping furniture arrangement, the visiting person pillow perhaps. The woman, seated cross-legged near the fire, finishes rolling her scent bundle and places it carefully beside a small pile of winter textiles. Then she reaches for something long and wrapped in hide. When she unrolls it, you see a series of wooden frames, narrow and rectangular, strung with thin hide or sinew. She taps one to get your attention. Snowshoe frames. Of course. She hands you one. It's lightweight, flexible, and wider than any modern snowshoe you've seen. She taps the outer rim, then the webbing, then gestures to the tips of your boots. Even you, the guest, will need these eventually. Winter isn't meant to be watched only from the inside. She pulls a bundle of rawhide strips from a pouch and begins weaving them through the frame, tightening them with practiced pulls that require strength but not force. The rawhide stiffens as it cools, forming the perfect mesh for distributing weight over deep snow. A historical fact warms your mind. Snowshoes varied widely between tribes and regions. Oval, long, pointed, curved, bear-paw-shaped, but all use the same principle. Spread your weight, stay on the surface, move with the snow rather than through it. You try weaving a strip. It ends up diagonal and chaotic. The woman gently removes it and fixes your disaster without saying a word. You accept your place in the snowshoe-making hierarchy. Very beginner produces chaos. The man sits on the other side of the fire, shaping a piece of horn with a stone scraper. You hear a rhythmic rasp, slow, steady like sand being brushed across a drum. When he turns the object slightly, you realize he's crafting a toggle hook, used for fastening winter clothing or securing the door flap in high winds. He shapes it with careful pressure, smoothing the edges until they shine faintly. He hands it to you. The hook is warm from his hands, perfectly, curved, remarkably strong. You marvel for a moment, another small piece of winter technology, shaped by practiced skill. The child sits up suddenly, sniffs the air, and toddles toward the pot at the fire's edge. The woman laughs softly and ladles out a cup of warm broth, which the child drinks with both hands wrapped around the wooden bowl. He finishes, wipes his mouth with the back of his sleeve, and returns to your lap, apparently deciding that hydration is best, followed by returning to his primary job of being adorable and sleepy. The tipi grows even warmer, not hot, but deeply, safely warm. Wrapped in layers of hides, fireside heat, and human presence, you almost forget there's a storm outside at all. Almost, a sudden, far-off groan echoes across the plains, deep, glacial, immense. The man pauses, listening. The woman stills. Even the child lifts his head. Then the man nods, ice shifting. Distant, not dangerous. The woman hums low, a soft reassurance. The child curls into, you again. The tipi settles. The man gestures for you to follow him to the back of the tipi. He lifts a hide flap near the ground, revealing a small storage pit dug into the earth lined with woven mats and covered by layers of hide and insulated material. Inside are food bundles kept cool but not freezing, protected from animals and snow. He points to the ground, then to the cold air outside, then to the pit. You understand. Winter tipis use the earth as a refrigerator, stable, predictable, always the right temperature. He closes the pit and pats it with satisfaction. The woman calls softly, and he joins her at the fire. She holds a small hide bag decorated with simple patterns, nothing elaborate, but carefully stitched. From the bag, she pulls out what looks like a flat disc made of dried hide or clay. She places it near the fire. You lean in closer. The child leans in too. The disc emits a faint aroma, sweet, smoky, earthy. The woman places it on a slab of stone beside the fire and sprinkles a pinch of herbs onto it. A soft plume of scented smoke rises, drifting upward, curling around the poles. The child closes his eyes and inhales deeply. A winter incense. An obscure cultural tidbit unfolds. Some families burned lightly aromatic materials during long storms, partly to freshen air, partly for ceremony, partly for comfort. Winter smells were part of winter life. She hands you the bag. You smell the mixture: berries, cedar, sage, maybe a hint of something floral. You feel the warmth seep into your chest simply by breathing it. The man rises again, checking the smoke hole with his long pole. The wind direction has shifted slightly, and he adjusts the flaps with fluid, practiced motions. The smoke clears instantly, flowing upward in a clean, steady line. Historians still debate how often families maintained the smoke hole during storms. Some say constantly, others say only when needed. Tonight, you see the truth. You adjust when the wind speaks. Not before, not after. The child climbs into your lap again and falls asleep instantly. You can feel the weight of his trust settling into you like another layer of warmth. The woman sits beside you and begins quietly teaching you a few simple words, gestures paired with soft syllables. Words for fire, for wind, for home, for winter. You repeat them softly, clumsily, earning a patient smile. You realize these aren't just vocabulary lessons. They're pieces of the world you're being allowed to enter. The man sits across from you, warming his hands over the fire, his expression softened by the low, golden light. The woman hums. The child breathes faintly against you. The tipi sways with the wind's gentle encouragement. You can feel the winter evening deepening, quieting, thickening into something peaceful. The fire becomes a low red glow, perfectly controlled. The heated stones still radiate comfort. The lining holds firm. The air flows gently behind you like the slow tide of warmth. You sit back, letting everything around you settle into your bones, the wisdom, the quiet, the safety, the shared human presence. Inside the tipi, winter feels less like a force and more like a conversation, one the family knows how to answer with skill, grace, and calm. And you are part of that conversation now. The storm has entered its late evening phase, now the long, hushed stretch where the wind drifts instead of pushes, and the snow falls in slow, unhurried spirals. The air outside has that deep, settled stillness of a world blanketed under fresh powder. If you step out, you imagine you'd sink straight into silence. But inside the teepee, everything is warm, golden, and quietly alive. The fire has been allowed to shrink into a low bed of coals, glowing like buried embers in a kiln. The heat they give off is deeper than flames, steady, radiant, comforting. The warmed soapstones arranged around the floor do their part too, releasing slow streams of heat that pool beneath the hides. The child sleeps against you again. At this point he has claimed you. As part of the interior furnishing, his head is tucked under your chin, his small breath slow and warm against your collarbone. Every time he exhales, your chest vibrates slightly. You wrap the fur blanket a bit tighter around him, and he melts into you without even stirring. The woman sits cross-legged near the fire, working with narrow strips of hide. She's making something small and clever, a winter carrying strap. She braids the strips tightly, then overlays them with softened fur so the strap will be warm where it touches the skin. She taps the fur and then points to her own shoulders. This strap is meant for hauling firewood or supplies. A historical detail settles quietly into your thoughts. Winter straps and tumplines were essential tools. Rather than dragging heavy loads through deep snow, families distributed weight across their backs and foreheads to move more efficiently. Simple physics, perfected through centuries of practice. The woman hands you the half-finished strap. It feels surprisingly light. She gestures for you to tug one end. You do. The braid holds firm. She nods approvingly. On the other side of the tipi, the man has begun working on something you haven't seen yet. He lays out a sheet of thick hide and begins cutting shapes, narrow, curved pieces that he arranges like a puzzle. You watch him, puzzled, until he picks up two finished pieces and ties them together in a compact, folded shape. A winter hand warmer. Not the modern metal kind. A hide pouch lined with fur, designed to hold a warmed stone deep inside. He slides a heated soapstone into the pouch, then closes it tightly with a bone toggle. The entire object radiates soothing heat. He hands it to you, and the warmth seeps so deeply into your palms that your shoulders loosen instantly. You didn't realize how much tension winter had curled into your fingers. The child stirs at the warmth of the pouch and lifts his tiny hand toward it. You guide his fingers to rest on the warm fur. He sighs deeply, the kind of sigh that makes your whole chest soften and falls back asleep. The tipi moves again as the wind shifts. A gentle bow, a soft correction, a breath. The man rises to adjust the smoke flaps once more. You watch him not because you need to, but because you've started to understand the deep calm in his movements. There is no rush, no frustration, only timing, awareness, relationship. He points to the coals, then to the opening. You listen. The draft changes slightly, a faint pull toward the smoke hole. Perfect. When he sits again, he brings something unusual to the fire. A long bone that has been hollowed out, carved with small notches, and wrapped at one end with tightly woven sinew. He taps it lightly against the floor. The sound rings like a thin, wooden bell. Then he taps it again. The child, half asleep, lifts his head. He knows this sound. You watch as he toddles, still wrapped in fur, toward the man and touches the instrument with both hands. A winter rattle. An obscure winter tidbit enters your mind. During long storms, some families use small rattles or percussion instruments to comfort children, to accompany stories, or simply to break the monotony of the wind. Not loud, not ceremonial, just gentle sound, for the sake of the spirit. The man hands the rattle to the child, who shakes it once, a soft clatter. He smiles, satisfied. Then he climbs back into your lap and falls asleep again immediately, as if that one shake fulfilled some cosmic requirement for his day. The woman laughs quietly. You laugh too. The fire hums, the wind hums. Everything hums. The man shifts his attention now to a bundle of long sinew strips. He wets them with warm water, pulling each strip through his fingers to soften them. Then he begins winding them together into a thick cord. Each twist tightens the fibers perfectly, a strong winter rope. He gestures at your wrists and mimics wrapping something around them. You gesture back. Tying things together? He nods. Rope for dragging wood, rope for securing hides, rope for adjusting tipi tension, rope for tools. Winter needed rope the way modern life needs chargers. You try twisting one small piece. It unravels instantly. The woman smothers a smile. The man retwists it in seconds. You accept your status as apprentice of winter cords. Outside, the storm deepens again, not harshly, but with the slow, enveloping presence of night settling in. Snowdrifts sound like sand shifting in a bowl. The poles above creak softly, a quiet reminder that even in calm, the world outside is alive. The woman begins preparing something aromatic again, placing dried herbs onto the warmth stone. A gentle scent fills the tipi. Mint, sage, and something sweet you can't name. The air feels instantly lighter, clearer. She hands you a small, dried leaf. You crumble it. The scent bursts upward into your senses. Then she begins humming a low, rhythmic sound that echoes faintly in the curved canopy of the tipi. It's not a full song, more like a winter lullaby without words. The child sighs and sinks deeper into your arms. The man's posture softens. Your breath slows. The tipi becomes a warm bowl of sound and light. The woman speaks softly, telling another story. You catch pieces: wind as a teacher, fire as a brother, snow as a quiet messenger. Her voice shifts with the parts of the tale, sometimes rising, sometimes falling, always gentle. Historians still debate which stories belong to winter and which to summer, whether some tales were meant only for certain seasons. But sitting here, listening, you realize that winter invites certain stories because the world outside is made of the same rhythms. Slow, vast, whispering, patient. The man listens while shaping the last of the winter chords. The fire glows. The air flows in perfect currents. The tipi walls curve around you like a cradle. You lift your hand to feel the warmth just above the coals. It rises in a steady column, swirling as it moves upward. The child's breath rises and falls with the same rhythm. You've become part of this place, part of this warmth, part of the quiet winter choreography practiced here for centuries. Inside the tipi, the world is small, warm, and endlessly wise. Night settles more fully outside, and with it comes a deeper quiet, so complete that even the storm seems hesitant to disturb it. Snow continues falling, but now it drifts down with the softness of settling ash. The world beyond the tipi walls has blurred into darkness and white, but in here, the fire's glow expands like a small sun, warm and steady. The child sleeps against your chest again, wrapped like a tiny winter parcel in fur. His fingers curl around the neckline of your clothing, and he makes a soft whistling noise with every exhale. You adjust his blanket gently and feel him press closer in reflex. You've become his favorite warm object, an honor you accept. The woman sits by the fire, her hands moving with slow grace as she smooths a length of hide across her lap. She's working on a pair of winter mittens now thick, double-layered, with fur facing inward. She sews with sinew thread, each stitch precise, each knot tight. Then she shows you something subtle. She leaves a small opening near the wrist seam, a ventilation slit. A historical detail settles into place. Good winter clothing allowed airflow enough to prevent sweat inside the layers, which could freeze or chill the skin. Even perfect insulation can be dangerous without breathability. She gestures for you to place your hand inside the half-finished mitten. You do. It's warm, almost immediately warm. The fur wraps your hand in a cloud of soft heat, and the hide shields you from cold without sealing you off completely. The woman nods in approval, and returns to stitching. The man sits across from her, shaping a long wooden tool, this one thicker, heavier, with a rounded tip. You watch him sand and scrape it until the grain lies smooth like flowing water. When he lifts it up for you to see, you finally place it. A snow probe, used for testing snow depth, locating hidden dangers, or finding firewood buried beneath drifts. He taps it against the floor, demonstrating its purpose. Then he hands it to you. It feels balanced, sturdy, heavier than it looks. You imagine walking across the plains with this tool, reading the land through pressure and sound. The child wakes just long enough to pat the probe with one hand, giving it his silent approval before falling instantly back asleep on your chest. Outside, the wind shifts again just slightly, just enough to brush the teepee with a change in tone. The man hears it immediately. He stands, adjusts the smoke flap with the long pole, and repositions a weighted hide near the entrance. The wind sighs, softened. The tipi responds. The warmth continues untouched. The woman pauses in her sewing and gestures upward. You follow her gaze to the poles overhead. Something about the angle of the lining draws your eye, the way it creates a buffer between the warm air inside and the cold air behind it. The curve of the inner lining looks almost like a second tipi nested within the first. She taps the lining lightly, then points to the roof, then to the floor. She's showing you the convection loop again, the interior airflow that keeps this entire space warm. Historians still debate how standardized these winter linings were, whether they were always double-layered or whether some families added extra insulation only during harsh seasons. But standing here, watching the lining move gently with the air, you see how essential it is. Without it, the tipi would not hold heat nearly as well. You're about to ask a question when the man returns to sit beside the fire. He opens a small bundle and reveals something unexpected. Beads. Tiny, bright pieces made of shell, stone, bone, and maybe even glass from trade routes. He hands the woman a strand. She begins adding a simple beaded trim to the mittens. You watch her hands move, each bead placed with intention. Winter isn't just survival. It's craftsmanship, beauty, memory. The child wakes again as if sensing that something interesting is happening. He crawls toward the woman, his little hands reaching for the beads. She gently pushes his hands back and hands him a piece of softened hide instead. He accepts it with solemn purpose and pretends to work on it, poking it with one finger like a tiny artisan. The man watches him, amused. Then he gestures for you to stand and follow him to the far side of the teepee. He lifts a hide flap and reveals a carefully arranged pile of firewood. But this pile is different from the others. These pieces are smaller, lighter, and cut with specific precision. Kindling sticks. He hands you 2 pieces and shows you how to split them along the grain with a bone wedge. You try. The wood splits cleanly, surprisingly easily. He nods. Then he shows you the next step, laying the split kindling in a tight pattern near the fire, so it warms gradually, ready for use in the morning. It dawns on you. This isn't just for tonight, it's preparation for tomorrow's dawn. Fire. The family doesn't wait for need. They prepare before need arrives. You feel a quiet admiration settling in your chest, deep and grounded. The wind outside softens yet again. Snowflakes drift through the smoke hole, catching the firelight as they melt mid-air. The teepee glows. The woman finishes the mittens and hands one to you. You slip your hand inside once more. The warmth envelops you instantly, deeper than before. She smiles. Then she reaches behind her and pulls out something else, a small pouch of dried pine resin. When she opens it, the scent expands across the little home like crushed pine needles and winter sunlight. She mixes a pinch with warm water and uses it to coat a strip of hide, a waterproofing mixture. The resin softens the hide but also repels moisture. Winter hide work wasn't just warm, it needed to keep snow, frost, and condensation at bay. She brushes a thin layer along the seams of the new mittens. You watch as the hide darkens slightly under the resin. She offers the brush to you. You apply a stripe, crooked but enthusiastic. She fixes it gently. The child toddles back to your lap, mitten in hand, and attempts to wear it. He gets 2 fingers in and stops, confused by his own anatomy. You help him. He beams, showing it off proudly to his parents before immediately removing it and handing it back to you like a gift. The man begins checking the poles again. An evening inspection to ensure no snow has accumulated dangerously. He doesn't leave the tipi. He uses the long pole to tap each exterior pole near the smoke hole, feeling for vibrations. Everything feels stable. He settles again. The fire shrinks even further now, just a glowing lattice of cherry-red coals. The warmth they emit mixes with the heated stones and hides to create an even, low heat across the tipi floor. You lean back. The child leans into you. The woman hums softly. The man sharpens a small antler tool with the sound of calm scraping. Everything feels complete. The tipi walls glow in the low light, their surface smooth and golden. The winter lining dances faintly with the rising heat. The air is soft and balanced. The scent of herbs drifts upward. Snow whispers around you like a lullaby. Inside this warm world, you feel yourself letting go. Tension melting, breath deepening, mind settling. You're nearing the heart of winter now. The night outside has grown impossibly quiet now, so quiet that even the snow seems to hesitate before falling. The storm has softened into a gentle breathing, a slow pulse echoing across the plains. Inside the tipi, everything feels suspended in a warm cocoon of hide, firelight, and soft human presence. The child sleeps once more in your lap, warm, heavy, peaceful. His small hand rests against your ribs, fingers twitching occasionally, as if he's dreaming of wandering through snowdrifts or shaking his tiny winter rattle. You tighten the fur blanket around him, and he nuzzles deeper without waking. The woman sits near the coals, her hands moving with calm focus as she ties the last bead onto the winter mittens she's been making. She lifts the finished pair toward the firelight to inspect them, strong, beautiful, practical. The kind of item that lasts years and holds memories stitched invisibly into every seam. She sets them aside with a quiet satisfaction that warms the room almost as much as the fire. The man checks the smoke hole one final time. The flaps barely need adjusting now, the wind outside is too calm to demand anything. Still, he listens, tilts his head, waits for the subtle sounds the tipi makes when something is off, and finds everything perfectly balanced. He gives the pole a light tap, then returns to the fire with the restful posture of someone who knows winter has finally decided to behave. He sits beside the woman. They share a few soft words, too gentle to interrupt the child's sleep, too quiet to disturb the stillness of the tipi. Their voices blend, with the low hum of coals, forming a kind of winter harmony that wraps around you like a second blanket. The woman reaches for the scent bundle and places it near the coals. Warm herbal fragrance drifts upward. Sage, cedar, sweetgrass, berry. The child sighs in his sleep, comforted by smells that belong to this season, this place, this home. The man takes one of the heated stones from the edge of the fire and tucks it carefully beneath the floor coverings at the sleeping area. The warmth radiates instantly, joining the slow heat of the coals and the lingering temperature trapped within the hide walls. Evening warmth, preserved for the long hours until dawn. Then he gestures toward the entrance, inviting you to follow him just for a moment. You carefully shift the child into the woman's waiting arms. She holds him easily, resting his head on her shoulder. He doesn't even stir. You and the man lift the flap. A thin breath of cold air brushes your cheeks. You look out, and the world is glowing. Snow covers everything in a soft, luminous layer. The plains stretch outward like a vast white ocean, calm and infinite. The sky is a deep blue bowl scattered with bright winter stars, each one sharp, unwavering, impossibly clear. You can see your breath rise in gentle clouds. You can hear the quiet, not absence, but presence. Winter's presence. The man stands beside you, calm, steady, proud of the world he lives in and the home that keeps his family warm within it. He gestures toward the tipi at the snow-packed base, the angled flaps, the poles rising like ribs toward the sky. You understand. A tipi isn't a shelter against winter. It's a partnership with it. He lowers the flap gently. The warm air greets you the moment you step back inside. The woman is already laying the child down onto the sleeping furs. He sinks into softness, curling naturally toward the warm stone tucked beneath the bedding. She tucks a small hide over him, smoothing his hair with tender fingers. The fire hums in its reddened glow. The stones radiate quiet heat. The warming scents drift through the air. The tipi breathes in slow, steady rhythms. You sit, and the woman covers your legs with a fur. The man nods, once an invitation to rest. Not as a guest anymore, but as someone who has shared the winter with them. Your eyelids grow heavy. Your breath deepens. The warmth presses gently around you. You have learned everything you came to learn, and winter is content to let you rest. The fire has settled into a low, glowing cradle of red coals, each one pulsing softly like a heartbeat. The warmth they give off is gentle now, slow, steady, almost weightless, filling the tipi with a quiet presence that wraps around your shoulders and settles into your spine. The hides beneath you feel warm and deep, holding the memory of the heated stones and the long hours of comfort they've offered. The air is thick with calm, not heavy, just soft. Soft in the way snow is. Soft. Soft in the way breath is soft. Soft in the way the world becomes quiet when it knows you're drifting towards sleep. The woman's humming fades into a whisper. The man's tools rest quietly beside him. The child sleeps without a sound. Even the storm outside has gone still, as if winter itself has decided to sleep beside you. Your thoughts loosen, drifting like flakes in slow motion. You feel the warmth of the tipi travel through you in long, unbroken waves down your arms, across your chest, into your legs. Your breath deepens, rising and falling with the same rhythm as the hide walls. You remember the small sounds, the rattle of tools, the clink of stones, the whisper of wind, the child's soft sighs, the fire's quiet conversation. They drift together now, blending into a single, long exhale. You picture the snow outside, glowing beneath the stars, unbroken, untouched, resting. And the tipi steady, warm, alive, holding space for you in the middle of that winter world. Your body grows heavier. Your thoughts grow quieter. Everything softens. You are safe here, warm here, at rest here. Let the warmth settle deeper. Let the quiet carry you. Let sleep find you gently like snow settling on a still, silent night.